So
Russell's in the room?
Yeah, no, just let it. I just want to welcome everybody to this 28th May Full Council meeting. Council blessings is James Coates. You ready?
Thank you, Guru. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana, e ngā take ke mua ia mātou aro, e pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu, ke te whakapau mahara, huapai mau ngā hapuri, e mahi ne mātoa. Me kaha hoki mātoa, katoa kia whaihua, kia tōtika, tā mātou mahi, a mā tamaya. Te tera whakamua, me te hiri ka taia, te araha I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Kia ora. Sophie Ann for smiling. You want to pass on the baton to who else do you want to pass on the baton to? Next. James. James, did you hear me?
Thanks, Gary. Sorry, I got muted by the host. I will pass on the baton, and I will pass that on to you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, what? Oh, thanks a lot, mate. I'll speak in Indian. Okay. Next item 3, apologies. Any apologies? No. Item number 4, declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. I've had no notification of that. Anyone wants to declare conflict of interest? No. Public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. Now we have 10. The first one up is Russell Spratt. You've got 3 minutes. And at 2 minutes, the buzzer will go. And then after that, you've got 1 minute to finish. Russell Spratt.
Your Worship, Councillors, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Russell Spratt ko ingoa, taku iwi ko Atiawa ki whakarongotai, no anai mai waikina me Kapiti Mōtiri, e tēnei rā ko au te manga o aku iwi ko Atiawa whakarongotai. My name is Russell Spratt. My iwi is Atiawa ki whakarongotai. I am from Waikanai and Kapiti Island. I'm a member of the Gateway Governance Group representing Atiawa ki whakarongotai. I chair the Ahu Whenua Trust representing landowners at Wairua Bay, Kapiti Island. I'm a landowner on the island and I have a home there. My association with Kapiti Island and our district dates back 200 years through my whakapapa. Today I'm representing my iwi, Atiawa ki whakarongotai, and I'm honoured to share their views as follows. Iwi recognise that there is a ratepayer contribution to the project and there is a projected positive economic impact for close to $6 million for the district in the first year alone. The financial implications for ratepayers need to be considered across the medium to long term, not the initial rate impact, particularly as we understand the economic impacts of COVID will be long-standing. There are significant long-term financial benefits in taking advantage of the Provincial Growth Fund now, both in terms of reducing the ultimate cost for ratepayers and in the long term, the economic benefits for the district. We're asking Council to take a strategic, not a reactive approach. Many of the economic benefits that come with tourists visiting the island are not effectively captured as the McLean Park Paraparamu Beach area is overlooked by visitors. The Gateway building provides the opportunity to better direct and capture tourist spending to the Paraparamu Beach area, and this was incorporated into the design. We also want to take opportunity to convey a message directly to councillors that as iwi, we see our role being to support council to make good long-term decisions and to act as partners in taking challenging decisions and issues out to our community. As is demonstrated in the Gateway project, sometimes as iwi, we are best placed to provide interpretation for the public about the intention or merits of projects. We are committed to assisting with that now and in the future. We want to confirm that iwi support the dual funding options under consideration by Council, and we look forward to working in partnership with Council and stakeholders in the safe development of this proposed community asset, an asset which will enhance the mana of the island, the Council partnership with iwi, and the entire community that you serve. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Right, councillors, any questions to Sir Russell Spratt? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Spratt, for your contribution.
My pleasure.
And apologies for the lateness in starting. Martin Holiday, you got your hand up.
Hi, Russell. Thank you very much for your presentation there. Look, I just wanted to touch on your comment there, asking Council to take a strategic, not a reactionary approach. Would it be a fair comment to say that a strategic approach would be coming from something like an economic development strategy with perhaps a tourism portion to that, and that would be our strategic plan moving forward into this? I'd be interested to hear your comments on that in regards to perhaps what's holding up that process at the moment.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the question. So, well, it really is just a matter of looking at the root word strategy. Strategy is about long term. And certainly you ought to be looking to your existing plans in that regard. And from an iwi perspective, I'm sure that you will understand that we look a long, long way into the future. And the strategy that we see unfolding for this motu is one which is steeped in kaitiaki, in care, in consideration. And we see our partnership with Council as being an opportunity for you to reflect your care, consideration and concern for that taonga. Therefore, your strategic plans ought to tautoko or support that, be they financial, be they cultural, be they hauora, health, or be they for the longevity of the safe care and concern of that asset.
Are you aware that in regards to the economic development strategy, every representation is one of the reasons why we're having issues landing it, being signed off?
Carl, I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
Interesting, thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next submitter is Dr. Mahina Rangi Baker.
He's just coming into the meeting now. Good morning, Dr. Baker.
Morena.
Morning, Mahina.
Morena.
You ready to go?
Yeah, just let me know when I can start.
Yeah, you can start now.
Okay. Morena, councillors and members of the public. I'm going to speak this morning about Gateway concept on behalf of Te Atiawaki Whakarongotai, and specifically the role of rangatahi or youth in that process. So back in 2016, when we were asked to participate in the McLean Park Development Plan, our youth led our input into the development of that plan, including the thinking around the Gateway facility. Their proposal around using the concept of a gateway arose from the understanding that the facility, the site of the facility is in fact the original entry point to Aotearoa and to our district. It was the original landing point of our ancestors, and the words that they used to indicate this were he tauranga and te tomokanga. And then this has been translated to Gateway in an attempt to communicate this idea to non-Māori speakers, but noting some of the feedback from the public, perhaps the genuine meaning has been somewhat lost in translation. The idea was that by recognising this site as an entry point, it triggers visitors and residents alike to reconsider how they may have thought about the area and the wider district. In particular, to give recognition to and share stories from the significant history of the site and the wider area. Our rangatahi, or our youth, were acutely aware that unfortunately there seems to be a lack of awareness of the important Māori stories of the district and few examples they can point to where the public celebrate them. They felt very strongly that there was a need to provide a place that allows all visitors to feel appropriately welcomed and to offer our unique stories of Māori and European settlement in the area so that our visitors leave being better informed about who we are as a district. There was also a strong interest on the part of the rangatahi and our wider iwi collective to use the opportunity of an upgraded facility to conduct long overdue improvement works on the Tikotu stream, which is in seriously poor health. The potential that we now see provided by the Provincial Growth Fund is to assist us to remedy these issues now, which would otherwise eventually fall on ratepayers to address as a whole at a later stage. We really want to emphasise that we see our role as iwi to assist the council, support the council in taking this idea out into the public. And so we also just want to mention that this does point to the need to address the partnership issues that we've raised with council, as we believe it's in both our interest to have this partnership functioning as strongly as possible. So finally, just to confirm that the iwi support the dual funding options under consideration by council, and we look forward to working in partnership with council and stakeholders in the development of what could be a wonderful asset for our community. Kia ora.
Thank you. We've got questions. Bernie Randall.
Yeah, Dr. Baker, can you hear me?
I can, Bernie. How are you?
And not bad. And you'll remember, yes, about 2.5 years ago, we spent many hours on the McLean Park development plan. And I remember walking over that bridge with you, the Titohi stream, and I agree with you, that should be improved. But I thought we had agreed, after listening to all that consultation, a small gateway building would be built on the boating club site. I thought that's what we had agreed to. Have you any comments on that, please?
The iwi actually endorsed a range of different options because the iwi senses that we need to ensure, you know, we're not in the position to prescribe for council exactly what they should select. There needs to be flexibility in terms of the options that council has. And so the small option, from what I can recall, casting my mind back, had our endorsement, noting that our governance representatives have been now the active representatives from us engaging in this. We could see that with the larger complex that's proposed, there are significant improvement works for the Tikotu stream that go beyond the point of the Tikotu, which is currently exposed. The proposal that's now on the table means that there will be significant improvement works further up the Tikotu, which is currently underground, and obviously that's really not good for the health of a stream. And so we support the option that's on the table, but it should be understood that we've provided flexibility to the council and that there are a range of options that have the support of the iwi, and the one that's on the table is one of those.
No, thank you.
No other questions. Mine are Dr. Baker. Thank you very much for your participation.
Kia ora tātou.
Our next speaker is supposed to be John Barrett. I'm not sure if he's available. Is he on?
John,
Do you know if he's available?
John Barrett hasn't signed in yet, so the next speaker we have is Jack Mace from DOC.
Thank you. Welcome, Jack.
Just being let in now. Welcome, Jack.
Kia ora, everyone.
Kia ora, Jack, you can start.
Great. E te tēmata ngā mihi nui ki ngā iwi o Kapiti, mai uta ki tai ki te mauteri, tēnā koutou katoa, Mr. Mayor, Madam Deputy, tēnā kōrua, councillors, council staff, tēnā koutou. Kapiti Island is a very important island for New Zealand, for its natural history and for its human history. Were it not for Kapiti Island, for example, the little spotted kiwi, one of our taonga, would have gone extinct over 100 years ago. From the department's perspective, it's what we'd class as an iconic visitor site, a category similar to that from Mount Taranaki or the Milford Track. Like the Milford Track, it's a site where we essentially want to provide a very good quality conservation experience for a smaller number of high value visitors. High value in the sense that they derive a significant social benefit from the deep conservation and natural experience they have there, but also high value in terms of their economic impact. For example, in the last year, we had 16,000 visitors to the island. That led to an estimated $6 million of economic benefit for the Kapiti Coast. We're supporting this proposal of the council because, first and foremost, we see the opportunity for improved biosecurity on the island so that we can protect the taonga species that are there and the mauri of the island into the future. We also see an opportunity to improve the visitor experience that visitors to Kapiti have on Paraparaumu Beach, so that it's lifted to be on a par with the experience they have on the island. There's an opportunity through the gateway to build demand for going to the island, including amongst locals, and to make the island more accessible, both in the sense of letting people know that they can actually go there and how to go there and making that more accessible, but also in the sense of using stories and interpretation to bring the island back to the beach and allow people to connect to it vicariously, even if they're not able to go there yet. There are other drivers which make the Kapiti Gateway a worthwhile proposition, but those four that I've just described are the primary reasons that the department is supporting the council's project here. Kia ora.
Thank you. Can I start the questions, Jack, by asking you firstly, all Crown agencies have specific responsibilities, statutory responsibilities. DOG has a specific statutory responsibility in terms of biosecurity. Local authorities do not have a specific authority to the level that DOG has. Are you aware that the Mayor's office had sent a letter to the Minister of Conservation, the Honourable Eugenie Sage, asking for support for our application to the PGF?
Yes, I am aware.
You are aware that she has returned a letter of support for us applying to be supporting our application to the PGF?
Yes.
My understanding of this is that her application is a Crown application to another Crown agency. So what I'm trying to get at is Dr. Baker talked about dual mode funding for the Gateway project. I see the application for the support from the Conservation Minister in your department to be funding for tax-based money to support the establishment of the biosecurity in the Gateway project.
Yes, what was the question there, sorry, Mr. Mayor?
So do you see that the funding is a dual mode funding? Part of the funding is for the council to share. The other part is Crown funding from PGF, which is essentially tax-based funding.
Yes.
And I see that has funding to go towards the biosecurity side of the Gateway project.
Yeah,
because from what the minister has said in terms of support, the support is clearly based on the primacy of the biosecurity facility that's needed.
Yes, so the minister and the department are separate, although she does provide us with our governance and leadership. And so her strong driver as the Minister of Conservation is around the improved biosecurity. Ours is broader, and ours also includes the visitor experience and the connection of the people of Kapiti and beyond to the island and the nature there. But yes, we are supporting the bid to, or the Minister has supported the bid to the Minister for the Provincial Growth Fund on that basis.
Yeah, and so can you draw the conclusion from there is that your support for the proposal is largely around the need for better biosecurity facilities on the mainland?
Not solely. I think, well, the reason we wish to support it is because of the improved biosecurity, but we also would like to support an end-to-end visitor experience for Kapiti Island so that people on the mainland also have a good experience before going out to the island. So that is, but we also would like to support.
Thank you very much. I think other people have put their hands up. Quinn Compton, then James Coates, and Janet Holbrook.
Experience before going out.
Kia ora, Jack. First, I'd like to confirm that you're speaking to us this morning on behalf of DOC as an organisation and not just as an individual.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Cool, perfect, thank you. So I note in 2017, DOC actually went to great lengths to assure the community up here that the biosecurity approach being used for the island was good and adequate, and that the facilities on the island in terms of tracks and that are actually adequate for the projected growth in visitor numbers. So if DOC now needs a greater level of assurance around biosecurity, why isn't DOC stepping up to contribute in capital or operational funding for this facility from their own baselines rather than relying on the hope of the PGF giving largesse to KCDC?
So I hear two parts of that question. So if I can just repeat them back to you. The first is you're interested to hear from us whether or not we think this extra biosecurity is needed or whether what's there is adequate. Secondly, you want to know about the department's contribution. Is that correct?
I guess it's about, you know, what's necessary in terms of biosecurity and what sort of gold standard in terms of biosecurity, because we've been presented as councillors that what DOC has put to us is the gold standard as opposed to what's absolutely necessary to do this. And then, yeah, the second part is why isn't DOC contributing to this if it's so important for protecting the island?
All right, so the first answer is around the biosecurity. So the current biosecurity, like the visitor experience, is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It is adequate, and that's demonstrated by the fact that we've not had an incursion from a visitor carrying over any pests to the island yet, or not any animal pests. Adequate is not the same as very good, and so if we have a crown jewel like Kapiti, anything that we can do additional to improve the biosecurity will be worthwhile. And so as a point of interest, when we had the stoat incursion in the early part of the last decade, that cost the taxpayer over $800,000 before it was eradicated. So further investment in biosecurity is actually very welcome, but it's not because it's broken. So in the same way that you might have a chip seal road going through a residential area, and you may put a smooth seal on that because actually that will make life better for all the residents around it, but chip seal or metal will still allow trucks to go past. This is probably a similar type scenario, albeit at a larger scale, and with more at stake. The second question is about the conservation contribution, or the Crown's contribution to the biosecurity of the island. So again, I'll go back to pointing out that we provide the Kapiti Island experience, which does deliver at present, without even adding projected growth, $6 million of economic benefit to the Kapiti Coast region every single year. We've put very significant infrastructure on that island, millions of dollars worth over the past decade. Our annual spend in maintaining that island and the experience there is in excess of $400,000 of operating, which is a very considerable chunk out of my budgets for Kapiti and Wellington. So we actually are already contributing, and we're contributing very considerable amounts. Secondly, we are talking about the Crown half funding this. So the PGF and DOC are not two different entities. We're different arms of the same entity, which is the Crown. And so we just need to remember that we are seeking 50% funding from the Crown, of which the DOC is part towards this facility.
Cool. Thank you.
Right. Next is Councillor Coates.
Morena, Jack, thank you for those responses. I'll elaborate further on one of them, which was around the financial contribution. Could you confirm that Council had or has approached DOC for funding for this facility? My understanding is the question has been asked in terms of a direct contribution, and that the answer was no. And if I could qualify that, I should have at the start, to appreciate that as elected members, our role is representing the community, and as elected members, we get those questions about why isn't DOC funding this, have they even been asked, and so forth. So that's my first question, and then I've got a follow-up.
Yeah, that's fine. And so again, I'll just repeat the answer I had before, which is the department is not directly was approached. We can't directly contribute to it from our own capital reserves, but we are supporting the PGF bid through to the Crown in general.
Thank you, Jack. The second one is, based on the proposal today in the paper to Council, does DOC have any serious concerns over the projected increased visitors to the island and the risk to the island itself in terms of not only the biosecurity, but the actual nature of the island itself and its presence?
The short answer to that is no, we don't have any concerns.
Thank you, Jack.
You finish. Next is Martin Holliday.
Thank you very much, Jack. I just wanted to touch on the visitor experience. Look, I appreciate in a perfect world, a gold standard would be absolutely fantastic, and that compared to where we are at the moment are quite two different worlds. In your opinion, is there a middle ground there that DOC would more than likely be comfortable with? That's the first part of my question.
That's a very difficult question to ask, in the sense that Council's developed this proposal and we've been on the governance, and so we've been involved in looking through the options, and we support what Council officers have put forward at present as being a good solution, having looked through several different options that Council worked through.
Excellent, thank you. And in regards to the Kapiti experience, if you like, going to Kapiti Island, I find the experience a very, what I would call, rustic experience. Do you believe that the concept that's been put forward sort of matches that sort of feel, if you like, that sort of rustic, sort of outdoor sort of feel?
I think it's possible to have a rustic and outdoor feel while also presenting the coast as I don't quite know how to put this.
I actually agree with you.
A high quality destination, I suppose. And so, you know, when you go to McLean Park, you see the brand new redevelopment there, which is very, very nice. Do we want visitors to the beach to go and see overgrown embankments, rusting iron bridges, degraded streams, and have that sort of rustic experience? Or do we want them to travel through modern, fit-for-purpose facilities out onto that beautiful beach and across that beautiful island? They'll still have that same Tūturu Kapiti experience of sea and sand, but we can do it in a way that shines a very good light on Paraparaumu Beach specifically, and the Kapiti in general. That'd be my response, I suppose.
Thank you for the answer, and I actually do agree with you. I wasn't referring to not having anything there. It was more referring to, should we say, a different approach to the project that has a rustic feel that ties in with what's at the island, and having a very similar sort of feel to on this side of the operation as well. That it fits, if you like, quite seamlessly.
Yeah, kia ora, Martin. We were involved in both technical advice and governance to the project, and I'd just say we support this option that the project has chosen, and the questions about that would be better put to the project manager specifically.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your answers.
Kia ora, Martin.
Next is Jocelyn Pravno.
Thank you, Jack, for coming along and talking to us today and providing us the information. So I have one question and potentially two questions. So in the report that we've been provided, and there's been quite a lot of discussion about the projection of visitor numbers to Kapiti Island. So could you please provide us with DOC's views on those, please?
Kia ora, Jocelyn. I'll probably start by setting the statutory framework. So, like councils, we're bound by strategies and plans that are statutory documents. The current statutory framework for the island, which is the 2018 Conservation Management Strategy, sets a daily limit of 160 visitors to the island, public visitors.
Per day?
Per day. And so that's where the numbers have been drawn from. And so we support that because that's a number that we reached through a full consultative process. The next step in that statutory process is the development of a specific conservation management plan for Kapiti. We'll do that in partnership with the iwi of the island, and again through a public consultative process, and that will provide an opportunity to alter those limits and in particular alter the visitation patterns or restructure the visitation patterns to the island to allow for I guess more effective ways of getting visitors there at reduced impact. I'm comfortable with those numbers as well though, because again, we have very good expertise within the department in managing much higher numbers of visitors than that to sensitive sites. Places like Nugget Point, like Cape Fell, and like the Plateau, Central Plateau volcanoes. And when we bring in the expertise of the local iwi on the coast as well and add that to ours, I'm very confident that we can manage visitors to the island even with increased numbers.
Thank you. So the projections are going up to 58,000, and I assume that those are the figures you're talking about. We haven't been given a time frame, except it would be after 2035, I think it is. Do you think that's a fair estimation?
Well, any projection of visitor numbers is a projection, exactly that, and we've seen that recently. That for many people, their projections have gone awry. But we have had very good year-on-year growth on Kapiti. It's been between 10 and 20% year-on-year. And we actually don't see the likes of COVID and the decline in domestic travel having a significant impact. Kapiti's got a very strong domestic pull as a bucket list destination for New Zealander. We're in talks at the moment with Indoc about the products that we offer to New Zealanders and what those could look like. And Kapiti's an absolute setter for further marketing. So I put as much stock in the projections as any bit as the predictions, but yes, I'm quite confident we'll continue to see it being a strong visitor product.
Okay, I appreciate that. So just one other question. So you've talked about DOC actually not putting any money, so, you know, for want of a better word, into the actual project, but you are supporting maintenance on Kapiti Island. So with those projected numbers, is DOC going to be able to find the funds to actually, you know, basically treble, or not treble, but basically more than double those visitor numbers?
Well, our cost per visitor isn't linear. We have what's the correct word? There's a significant scale of economy with visitor management, and so we can absorb more numbers on our current infrastructure there. You know, we don't have to add another 1/16,000 because we get another visitor, and we do have capital within DOC for improvements to the island. So as the numbers build there, we will be able to access more capital if we need it for further upgrade. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers.
All right. No other question for Mr. Mace. Thank you, Jack, for your submission.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Guy Burns.
Hi. I just get my system organised. Okay. Yeah. Ready? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Haste is waste. The gold-plated Kapiti Island Gateway project is being rushed to meet a central government timeline. The process is being tailored to meet provisional growth fund requirements rather than community need or vision. It's rushed with poor community consultation. Councillors, you are voting on proceeding the Kapiti Island Gateway project, but do you fully understand the consequences? $2.2 million of ratepayers' money up front, where most places are reducing spending. The creation of 2 full-time staff, a long-term ongoing expenditure. Most places at this time are reducing staff. I have information from a Kapiti Island operator that they are opposed to the current gateway vision. And if anyone knows about visiting Kapiti Island, it will be them. They are currently happy with existing biosecurity arrangements, which DOC approves. They also state that the assumption in the council's report that visitor numbers will increase by 300% is absurd. A stitch in time saves 9. Your agenda report states that by 2023, the gateway will be making over $6,000 per week income. $6,000, nearly $1,000 a day. But conveniently, there is no detail on how this figure will be achieved. I warn you, councillors, this projected cash cow may turn into a white elephant. No one is against some sort of low-cost biosecurity building. The current concept will consist of a visitor centre of 75 square metres, a biosecurity pod of 160 square metres, and a decked area of around 450 square metres. All up, a massive footprint of around 685 square metres, taking up 20 current car parks. Haste is waste. The Kapiti Island Gateway project is an example of the horse leading the farmer. It should be the other way around, but because of provisional growth fund deadlines, the project process is being rushed and lacks public buy-in. The project will cost ratepayers dearly, over $2 million up front, and ongoing council expenses of nearly $400,000 per year. Can the project and start talking to the community? Finish.
Right. First question, Councillor Randall.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Burns. I have my question is divided into two parts. Are you totally opposed to a Kapiti Island Gateway? That's my first question. And the second question, are you confident on the figures of $2.2 million for the ratepayers' construction costs contribution?
I'm not totally opposed to this current project, which has been rushed and lacks proper consultation, but I would think that some sort of low-cost, small, covered, open-sided building could be used, and such a building could be used both by operators and users of McLean Park, just a small little building. Conversely, though, if the current project was self-funding, and what I mean by that is a zero cost or contribution by ratepayers, I would support that. And the second question, what was that again, sorry?
Are you confident on the figure of $2.2 million for the ratepayers' contribution?
Not at all. Even the report states that the true construction costs will not be known until the tender process is completed. In the current environment, the figure could balloon out and leave ratepayers carrying the can, as we did for the aquatic centre, which doubled in price.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Good morning, Guy. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Just on your comments following Councillor Randall's question, you do appreciate that there's an unusually high contingency in the project of 35% for the very reasons that you've just outlined in terms of construction costs?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I realise that.
Are you suggesting that it could balloon out further from that?
I think in the current environment, it can, and we've seen it happen. We saw it happen with the aquatic centre. It over doubled in the estimates that were put forward at the time.
Thank you, guys. Second question was just around the upfront cost. Are you aware that the $2.2 million, if it is approved, isn't upfront all at once in the first year?
I'm aware of that, but it is $2.2 million or more for ratepayers to pay, with interest, of course.
Okay, that's all. Thanks very much, Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. The next person is Glenn. Is it Vicky?
I think it's Vicky. We weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
Vicky, yeah.
Is she there?
I think she's connecting. Her audio is connecting. Good morning, Vicky.
Welcome, Vicky.
We're not being able to hear you, Vicky. Have you connected the audio to your computer?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, sorry people, headset issues there, it all tested fine. Right, so I guess my 3 minutes starts now. Vicky Cooper, I represent Kapiti Island Eco, one of the 2 commercial operators of Kapiti Island. I will summarise our biosecurity. We currently meet biosecurity standards as audited by DOC, and there has never been a breach by a commercial operator. Throughout consultation, we were assured biosecurity was not a user pays model. All this changed in the last 2 weeks. All that is required is a simple, cost-effective, multi-purpose bus shelter type solution, which would be cheap to build with very little ongoing OPEX. DOC have specified this gold standard facility, but yet are not contributing to the cost, so why would ratepayers be expected to? Kapiti Island Eco are not in a fiscal position to pay if it is a user pays model. The objective of biosecurity can be achieved at a fraction of the cost. The commercial assumptions that have been made. The business case is working on the assumption of a 300% increase in visitors, calculated from operating 365 days of the year. If this is the basis for the business case and financials, it is fundamentally flawed from the beginning, and thus changes the entire scope, costings and return of the project. Forecasting should be modelled from actual visitor numbers with a realistic uplift. We do not trade in winter because there is simply no demand, and a new building will not change the fact that people do not want to go in winter and a limited number want to go in the shoulder season. Commercial tenancies. We were opposed to commercial tenancies from day one. Why would the council build a building for 2 commercial operators? The proposed Discovery Centre in the last design we saw was 55 square metres. These 2 tenancies of even 20 square metres each leaves 15 square metres available for multi-use for the public. Gateway or an eyesight? Throughout our engagement, we were ensured this was not an eyesight and drag. Now it appears to be staffed by 2 full-time equivalents. Sounds exactly like an eyesight and drag to me. We've just closed the eyesight. Now you are staffing a Discovery Centre with no eyesight functionality to actually provide a return to ratepayers. Throughout this process, we were led to believe that this was not user pays and would not be staffed, only to be told in the last 2 weeks after the completion of the consultation process that this was not the case. Had we known this from the outset, we would have advocated entirely differently. We have been completely misled. In principle, we are not opposed to some sort of Kapiti Gateway. What we are opposed to is a 160 square metre user pays gold standard biosecurity unit and commercial tenancies. Kapiti Island Eco is a small business. If this project goes through, we will be forced to pay for biosecurity, parking, another debacle I haven't even touched on, and a commercial tenancy which we otherwise would not consider. I'm sure you can understand we are less than thrilled at this prospect. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Compton and then Councillor Holbrook.
Kia ora, Vicky. Thank you for speaking to us today. I think it's hugely valuable to have your perspective as one of the operators actually presented directly to us as councillors. So I note in the past, DOC has had to actually cut concession prices to stimulate visitor demand to the island. So with that in mind, and your experience as an operator, would something like a biosecurity surcharge on top of ticket prices have a negative impact on visitor numbers, and would it affect the viability of your business?
Yes, Gwen, that's absolutely right. It will have an impact because, well, user pays basically means it will have to be incorporated in the price of the day trip. So therefore, it will just increase in price. Now, in times like these, where we're facing COVID-19, all tourism has been absolutely decimated. Now, I understand only 20% of our customers were international, but you've also got all Kiwis looking to travel internally, okay, but many losing their jobs and many scared of losing their jobs. There's a lot of public opinion that all tourist prices should be dropped. How on earth would we increase at a time like this?
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Next is Councillor Holbrook.
Thanks so much for coming today, Vicky. It's really important that we hear your feedback, particularly as you would potentially be one of the big users of the facility. I have two questions. The first question is, we heard from Mahinarangi Baker earlier that the concept of a gateway initially from an iwi perspective wasn't so much a gateway to Kapiti Island as a general gateway to the whole of the Kapiti experience and the cultural significance of that. Is that something that you've factored in when you're thinking about this project?
Yes, Dana, I'm very concerned about this. From the beginning, it was always pitched to us that this would be a facility for the whole of the coast. And we always raised our concern that this would be the John Barrett and Cooper show. And the public backlash from that is also a significant risk to our business. With the square metres that I talked about before, the 55 square metre Discovery Centre, I believe that's possibly been increased by 20 or so, but it still leaves a very small building that would serve the public in this multi-use need that is very, very important for this sort of public spend.
Thank you. That's a good answer. So my other question is, the exact details around the operation of this facility and how charges would be applied and everything like that is still not completely finalised. If it were to be revisited and the user pays model was reconsidered, would your organisation, do you think, have a different perspective on it?
I still think it's completely over the top for public use of money. Now, whether it's ratepayers or taxpayers, it needs to stand up to scrutiny, and I don't believe that this does. It's just gone too far. And also, Janet, you know, you good people here representing the ratepayers at the moment may well say it's not user pays and let's just get this done. But what about the future? What if in 3 years' time the public opinion is so great that we are forced to pay for it? We have no protection of that.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming today.
Next is Councillor Holiday, then Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much for coming in, Vicky. I think your point of view is very, very important. Look, as a tour operator, you've forged a relationship with the Dive Club. How does that relationship work with you guys, and how could you potentially see, with whatever ends up as a potential on the in the space that's being talked about, how do you think that relationship might work into that?
Sure, Martin. So currently we partner with the Dive Club. We pay a small amount a month for the use of their toilets, which has been a bit of a pain point when our customers arrive and are wanting to check in. So that's been great to us. And we also use the other side of the Dive Club, which has got the plastic sort of sides on it when it's bad weather, to be able to check our customers in undercover and provide a little bit of protection. How that would work if we were moved to this other side of the stream in the other building? Well, I don't imagine that we would have much of a relationship with them, to be honest. They provide us all that we actually need.
Okay. With regards to how the boats are maintained, etc., I'm sort of getting the understanding that, you know, we've got the people aspect of things, should we say, happening, should we say, on the south side of the stream. But from the boat's perspective, is there any sort of change happening there? Will they sort of be staying in the car park, still be getting cleaned down in the car park and all that sort of thing, you know, sort of taking up space in that car park as such? I'm talking about the boat club car park.
Sure. As I understand, there wouldn't be any change on that, because where else would they go? So they still be parked up there. They still be washed down there. When we load our first lot of customers at the moment, we do it in the car park, and from then on we load on the beach. I guess the only change would be in the future, if you were using this new facility, they would walk across the bridge and down the beach, even from the first. I see a lot of public opinion on the car park issue and how it's not working and it's dangerous and everything else. And I see this as a complete overreaction, because I've never seen any issues. I've never seen an accident. I've never seen anyone injured. I've never seen a complaint. The boaties all get down there. It actually just works fine as it is.
Would you see, you know, as numbers, should we say, expand down at the beach, this is what's being touted, there could be, you know, congestion issues? I mean, I'm aware that, you know, on good days you get 130 boats going down to the beach and parking up.
Yeah.
They come back as Ballon washed down. Do you see congestion issues developing there, or have there been congestion issues?
I can see issues arising there because at the moment, I don't know if any of you have actually seen our operation, but where we check in right where the boat is. And quite honestly, we direct people to park because it is a bit tight. But, you know, we use where Te Ahi parks overnight, we use that car park, and we use where our boat parks overnight once it has moved off, and we just sort of direct people in there, and it works. If we were off onto the other side of the creek, then the public will just be trying to get a park wherever they can, and potentially there are issues there. As far as like the boats parked down the beach for recreational use on a fine day, I've never seen any issues with that, even at our highest, and that would be us doing 3 loads and our nature tours also possibly doing a couple, so 160 a day, so that's not.
And just touching on parking, if the status quo was remained or something small was put in instead of the size of the operation that's been put in, the car parking that's available, which is going to be removed, is, in your opinion, is that car parking important, you know, all that car parking important to the visitors with regards to being able to find a park and keeping them out of that boat club car park? Because I'm under the impression the boat club car park's not really there for the car parking for people that are going to Kapiti Island. So, you know, as we move forward in this, we wanted to see, I guess, a diminishing of people parking at Kapiti Boat Club. Yeah, do you see there any issues there of, you know, if we're decreasing the size of, or decreasing the number of car parks in that car park just on the south side of the stream?
Yeah, I would see huge issues with that because, as you know, car parking is an issue. The proposal to use the Summer Golf Club land, you know, I could see that working for nature tours overnight visitors because they don't really want to park in a public car park overnight anyway. But just for overflow day trippers, again, it's another cost. It's indicative cost of $9 a car park, which once again, we will have to pass on to our customers. It's not ideal at the moment, the parking, but it does work. I mean, the pinch points are Saturday morning with the market, where it's busy, but look, that's a great thing. There's a great vibe going on. And about 3 or 4 weeks right over peak season of summer, it's busy, but it works. Any decrease in parking will be significant.
And last question, do you see if should we say a simpler option on the south side of the stream was put forward that didn't take up car parks, would you see that as a beneficial scenario for the Kapiti Coast, Kapiti Island experience?
Yes, certainly, especially if it included downgrading of this biosecurity building and more space delivered to the public.
Lovely. Thank you, Vicky. Much appreciated.
Right, we've got Councillor Elliott and Councillor Buswell.
Good morning. Vicky, thank you for coming to speak to us. It's really good to have you here. I have a question that you may not want to answer for commercial sensitivity, and I completely understand that. But for over 20 years, it was built up a business of winter trips across to the island involving hundreds and hundreds of school children. And school trips, usually 2 busloads a day, 1 or 2 days a week, nearly through the entire winter. Can I ask why the schools not wanting to go to the island anymore?
I'm not aware of schools travelling in the winter, Jackie, but we deal with a lot of schools. They are a significant part of our business, as does nature tours. So I don't know why you would take school children in the winter when you can take them in settled weather in the summer.
Okay, can I just suggest why? Because there is a lot of settled weather in winter. It was quite cold out there. The sun went down quite early in the afternoon, but we found that, you know, we found for 5 years that there was, that I was involved, that there was significant timing, good days for good sailings, and the schools really took advantage of that. So whether or not the schools could, or you could sail to the island or use an outdoor or an indoor classroom on the mainland, would your business be interested in any of that business with the schools over the winter periods?
Well, of course, we'll always be interested in additional business, but as I stated, we are already dealing with all of the schools that we can think of. We have approached every school between Palmerston and Wellington City. So I don't know what this market is that you're talking about that we're not already touching. We don't turn people away in shoulder season or summer season because we have school books.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Councillor Buswell.
Thanks, Vicky, for coming and finally getting in to speak to us. I just wanted to ask a little bit more, I guess, about your own business and your plans. Some business are happy with status quo, and other businesses are wanting to grow and develop and create a better customer experience and things. And I guess on a scale, where would you be sitting in that? You know, we heard from Doc that they were really looking forward to improving the end-to-end customer experience for people coming over to visit the island. So how do you feel like about that? Do you think that this would improve your customer service, your customer interaction, and essentially your customer experience with Kapiti Island?
Thanks, Angela. As I said, we do support this gateway in some shape or form, and we're always looking to improve what we deliver to customers. I'm sure you've seen the results of the survey that went out as part of this whole project, and we had rave reviews. I've never seen an NPS score like that, and across several other businesses. Customers love what we give them now. We don't have complaints about biosecurity or the experience of checking in and getting straight on the boat. So I think this is just completely over the top. Having said that, like a multi-purpose discovery centre that serves the whole coast, that customers could walk around and be further educated and have some shelter perhaps from bad weather, absolutely, that would be good. We're always looking to invest in our business and improve it.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Vicky. No other questions. Thank you for your time. We've got John Barrett ready now, I think. Is he there?
Should be just dialing in now. Hi, John.
Hello.
John.
Hello. Hello. I'm able to speak, am I? And you can hear me?
Yes, we can. You can speak now.
Okay, so morning, everybody, and apologies for not being a bit more efficient with this, but I'm speaking to the proposal today, and I would urge councillors really to consider the papers that are in front of them, because I think everything in the papers should speak for themselves. Actually, it's the proposal I thought was well set out. It deals in facts. I support the figures and the facts that are in the proposal. I know there's been lots of chatter and suggestions why this Kapiti Island Gateway proposal is not right for the time. And I know people will have the view that I have a vested interest in this business, but please keep in mind I was involved in this business of the Kapiti Island Gateway Centre 30 years ago, well before I was involved in the Kapiti Island business. My belief then, and it's the same now, is this facility will be an asset for the Kapiti district into the future, well into the future. If council doesn't accept that we're going to experience growth in the Kapiti district, then that's fine, dispense with this type of thinking. But if the council believes that growth is inevitable in our district, we need to manage it carefully. The Kapiti Gateway Centre is part of that visitor management, in my opinion. So I really, from our business point of view, having a modern age, new world facility is the least we can do. Our Kapiti Island experience, contrary to what some others might say, is third class, third world, when people have to do their check-in and biosecurity process in the car park of the Kapiti Boating Club and then come to a world-class experience on Kapiti Island, it just doesn't match up. It just doesn't make sense. But for 30 years, people have said, various councils, various mayors, various experts have all promoted the idea of a Kapiti Island Gateway Centre. And in my opinion, this is the best opportunity we'll ever have of getting the thing completed. If we don't do it, if it's not done, Kapiti District's going to be the poorer for it, in my opinion. And that's without any self-interest in terms of a Kapiti Island tourism operator. We can survive, our business will survive without it, but the Kapiti District will be poorer for it, in my opinion.
Right.
That's really all I can say.
Okay. John, can you just hang on there? We've got a couple of questions from Councillors Angela Buswell and Councillor Compton.
Hi, John. Thanks very much for joining us today. It's really great to have you on board. I know that you have been immensely involved in this for quite some time, so I just want to congratulate you on your stickability and never giving up. So this proposal's been on our long-term plan since 1992. I just want to hear from you personally, what are your excitement levels like right now, knowing that this could potentially actually come to fruition after all this blood, sweat and tears that you have personally put into the project?
Well, thanks for that question. I mean, my excitement levels were high back in 1990, whatever it was, when the first drawings were put in front of me to look at. I was excited then. I've been excited all the way through, right up until the last drawings were presented. So my excitement level's high, and it always has been. But in terms of stickability, it's a project worth sticking to. But
Wonderful.
My excitement really is not. My excitement is actually also for the beach commercial area and the Kapiti town and Kapiti district.
That's great. It'll certainly enhance that visitor experience, and that's what we're aiming for. Thanks, John.
Thank Councillor Compton, then Councillor Coots.
Kia ora, John. Thank you for taking the time to share your perspectives, both as an operator and someone who's been involved in this for 30 years. My question is that given the business case in today's council papers doesn't actually reflect any drop-off in international visitor numbers or the impacts of COVID-19 in terms of what's been called the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, how confident can you feel around the actual projected growth numbers in it, given it doesn't even seem to have a realistic starting point in it?
Well, we are in extraordinary times, there's no question about that. But we're also in times of no great change in terms of, once we get past the COVID era, people will, in my opinion, people will look back and say, what the hell, we've had a blip for 12 months, maybe 18 months. The Kiwi and the international inherent wish to travel and experience new things won't, well, unless the human race takes an absolute different direction. Tourism, the tourism figures that are available have been well researched. We need to take out the next 12 to 18 months of international growth, but domestic growth will still be strong. International growth will come back. There are just too many other interests. Once we get past the health security issues, there's just too much infrastructure and machinery, and mainly infrastructure, that's geared towards tourism to even contemplate that tourism won't be a major economic driver in our country for the next 50 years. That's got to be managed differently, and that's something that Kapiti District can do if they're a mind to. Look at developing and managing tourism differently. The Gateway Centre will enable us, or enable the local sector to manage our visitation a little bit differently and quite a lot better. But
Are you aware that after...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, are you aware that after the global financial crisis, that actually domestic tourism numbers took around about 5 to 10 years to actually recover to pre-GFC levels because of the depth of that recession?
Yes, yeah, that's, I'm aware of that. And I've been around long enough to understand and have experienced the impacts of all the major world events in the last 50 years, essentially. So I do know what's required in terms of comeback. But keep in mind that this facility you're talking about, if it's built now, it's going to be available and useful and an integral part of the scene for the next 50 years. I mean, it's all about timing, I think.
Thank you.
Councillor Coates, then Councillor Harborough, then Councillor Martin.
Morena, John, thank you for joining us today, and certainly respect where you're coming from, both your comments as having an interest in the island, but then also declaring your interest as an operator, two very separate things. Previous to you, we've had Vicky Cooper, the other operator on the island, and the reason why I say that is I didn't ask this question of Vicky because she in herself answered it in her speech to the council in terms of the views around the projected visitor numbers. The question that I have to you is, in the report there are some quite optimistic numbers around increasing visitors to the island, and what I want to understand from you as an operator is what potential do you see in increasing visitor numbers either to or around the island? Just re-emphasising the concerns we have around the projected growth numbers in the report. And then I have a follow-up question.
Right. Well, look, my experience over the last 20 years of tourism projections and predictions, particularly in the last 5 to 8 years, have been grossly inaccurate. And they've been inaccurate on the negative side, not the positive side. I don't see any reason, taking out the COVID environment, for that trajectory to continue once we're through this COVID period. The reality for our district, for the lower part of the North Island, the changing demographic is a much more demanding demographic than we had 20 or 25 years ago. That demographic wants to travel. They want to experience things. I'm absolutely confident in the growth predictions with the rider that I think they're conservative.
Thank you, John. The next question I have is really around the investment from Tourism New Zealand, and I know that's not entirely clear, but there has been a budget amount announced. Clearly, there's a question or concern from ratepayers and elected members around the future of domestic tourism. I think Gwyn has quite succinctly made the point that 20 to 30% of your existing visitors will not be around because they're international visitors. The point that I do want to make is that the facility won't be open until October 2021, and I think that's a point that people are missing. This won't be open tomorrow. The question is, what level of interest or return do you see to domestic tourism, and what investment are you hearing from Tourism New Zealand or the government, given the connections that I know you have into that sector?
Okay, well, look, you're right. I have been closely connected with the tourism sector. I've been on webinars and Zoom meetings for the last 4 weeks, virtually non-stop. The last Zoom I was on last night was with the Minister of the Minister of Tourism, also the Chief Executive of Tourism New Zealand, and their optimism was encouraging. I'm sorry, what was the focus of your question again?
So look, I guess it's the level of investment being signalled to try and encourage people back to domestic tourism.
Right. Yeah.
Short question is,
sure. Okay, yeah.
October, November this time, October, November next year, what do you think will be, given that investment, the activity around domestic tourism as compared to tomorrow?
Right. Okay. Well, just personally, we're gearing our business to get back to very close to the growth we were experiencing in 2019. So that's our level of optimism, and our level of optimism is based on the degree of bookings and inquiries we're getting now for domestic travellers visiting Kapiti Island and the Kapiti District in the early part of 2021 and the latter part of 2020. Already we're seeing really hard evidence and strong bookings for September, October, November 2020. there's no reason in the world to expect that that won't continue into 2021, 2022 and onward. It's just, you know, you have to take a wide view of this and just think about what are Kiwis going to be doing. They're not going to be staying home. They're going to be moving around Aotearoa, New Zealand. And if we don't get them, if we don't pitch for them, they'll go to Wairarapa, they'll go to Taranaki, they'll go to Marlborough. And that's what we're up against in the Kapiti district. You know, it's not, we shouldn't be fighting each other. We need to be scrapping for visitors to come to the Kapiti district.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Councillor Harborough, then Councillor Holiday, then Councillor Elliott.
Kia ora, John. Thanks for checking in today. It's certainly really useful to hear from you. I've got a couple of questions today. So the first question is, as James has pointed out, we did have another operator coming in today, concerned that passing on the cost, the user pays cost of the biosecurity facility would impact on their customer numbers. Do you share that concern?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Next, I do want to refer to a couple of other people who came along today, Mahina Arangi Baker and Russell Spratt, who talked about the importance of this to iwi. And just as tangata whenua, as well as a business operator in the area, could you comment on what you see as the wider opportunity and the wider cultural benefit of this facility?
Sure. Look, I think that the proposed and planned facility is in a fantastic spot to deliver a wider range of benefits than most people might stop to consider. I mean, the functional biosecurity and visitor tourism part of it is clear as day as far as I'm concerned. The other aspects that will be equally important, or are equally important to me, and I suspect that Dr. Baker might have talked about those this morning, and Russell Spratt. The iwi has a very, very focused approach to things, mana enhancing activity on that spot. It's a historic, the site of Tūruhi Pā. There's a whole lot of history and stories around that site that just don't get told. Now, that's a significant part of what can occur from that site. And it is a major site culturally for both Te Aotearoa and Ngāti Toa. And I'm sure and I hope that Dr. Baker would have expressed that. But I support, in fact, I support whatever she said without even knowing what she said.
Kia ora, John. Thank you very much.
Councillor Holiday, then Councillor Elliott.
Hello, John, and thank you very much for your presentation. Look, I agree with you that about the third world experience down there, and that we do need to sharpen it up, most definitely. Look, just slightly building on what Janet was asking you in regards to the ticket pricing. Could I just ask, is it your intent to absorb these costs, or do you intend to have these costs as an add-on to your current ticket price?
Well, look, it's just the same as adding any other cost to our product. Anybody in business, when they're struck with a cost that is new and maybe out of left field or right field, you simply have to work at ways to build it into your product. Then, if we're talking about if we thought the cost was unreasonable, I would definitely be coming back to council and saying, look guys, this just isn't reasonable, and I'd be out of there in a flash. But I just can't see that happening. I don't see any reason why a reasonable cost can't be absorbed into a product, into a ticket price. I mean, it's a fundamental business transaction, sure. And we've got a market, we've got a captive market, and I know that because we've been dealing in it for a long time. People want to come to Kapiti Island. I know there was a time when the permit prices were put up, and that had a negative impact. But a lot of that's in the story that goes with it, you know. So I'm not concerned about building extra value into the product cost, because that's the way I see it actually. It's an added value to the product.
Thank you very much. The previous operator expressed, well, we've had a letter from them, and mentioned that, you know, at the top end, 150 days a year is about the use that's received, if you like, by your concessionaries just due to weather and the time of the year and that sort of thing. Do you agree with that that number? And also, like in those winter periods, how do you see developing business to utilise your service? I'd be interested in your comment in that regard.
Okay. So when we started our business, when you got to the early part of March, you'd think about closing down because the weather 20 years ago, when you got into autumn, beginning of winter, things didn't feel quite so good. I'm out here at Wairua Bay, Kapiti Island right now. There are, I don't know, in front of me there's about 40 boats in the water. Just if you can look outside, and I'm sure you can't, it's a fantastic day at the beginning of June in the Kapiti district. There's absolutely no reason why we couldn't be operating tours today, and there's no reason why we can't attract people to Kapiti Island on days like today, given good marketing and given other good the conditions that you need to do it. But our weather patterns have changed. There's no question about that. I've been around long enough to know, and it's a not so subtle change. You know, it's a dramatic change that's giving us a longer season. There's no question about it. So I've no doubts about increasing the number of operating days for our business. In fact, we're banking on it, we're planning on it, and we're developing our plans around that.
Okay, that's fantastic. Look, with regards to the stream and the area around that area, it's quite run down. It needs a lot of work, and we know that that's part of the proposal. But I'm curious, has any sort of push for this? Sorry, has pushed for the cleaning up of the stream in the past? Because there's been a long time that could have been dealt with.
Has who pushed? Are you asking me if we're pushed?
Yourself as operators, you know, we've been looking at ways to sort of tidy. Perhaps that's not a relevant question to this conversation.
Well, there are plenty of environmental groups who will be doing that and have done that in the past, I know.
Yeah, one could argue. You've had a previous relationship with the Kapiti Boat Club with regards to trying to use that as a concession. I realise you're in a cafe now. How did that relationship go?
It went well while we were operating, but we just couldn't handle the 500% increase in rental that they charged. So that's an operational thing. Everything else about it worked very well. It was the perfect spot to do the check-in and the biosecurity work. It was convenient. Everything about it was good, except the cost. It was just too high. So
can I ask?
That's my answer to that question there.
Can I ask at the time, because I think that was a result of the report that was done around 2013. That was one of the options that was given in there. Was there much KCDC facilitation in perhaps trying to make that work?
Well, look,
Martin, I don't think your questions are relevant to the agenda today. Martin.
I would beg to differ.
Well, I could answer it. I could answer it, Your Worship. I've got an answer for that question.
If you think you want to answer that, okay.
Well, I do. I think it's an important question to answer because, and my answer would be, my experience with this, and I don't think there's anybody tuned into this Zoom, this meeting today who's had more experience and contact with this project than me. I know the work that the council has done in trying to get to a position, and it's been hammered on all sides by various parties not being satisfied with this or that or something else, and that's resulted in a 30-year hiatus in getting a piddly. Now I know $2 million might not sound piddly to people, but I'm talking about the scale of the project. There would have been projects achieved in that 30 years costing much more than this. It wouldn't have brought the same value to the Kapiti district. So what I know is the Kapiti District Council has worked hard to try and get some resolution, working with the parties that needed to be worked with. Sadly, without success.
I don't take anything away from the work that the KCDC doing in this current situation. I applaud the work that Janice has put in. I'm more referring to the relationship, previous relationship, in regards to, I guess, KCDC interaction with the Paraparaumu Beach area. That's why I was trying to get a bit of an establishment of whether
Martin,
you were assisted through that process.
I think you've exhausted that, haven't you?
that's not for me to answer, I don't think.
Yeah. So have you got another question?
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Jackie Elliott and then Rob McCann.
Oh, look, thank you, John. Great to hear you today. You've just about answered all my questions, and it's always so good to hear from you. I get such confidence that you've got the ear of the entire tourism industry. There's been some talk about the effects of COVID-19. Can I ask you, John, from a tourism professional point of view, do you think New Zealand's response and our statistics in our COVID response compared to the rest of the world and other countries has increased our appeal for New Zealand as a destination or decreased it going forward?
I haven't really thought terribly much about that consciously, but my off-the-cuff response would be, it seems to me through media and press that we've been held up in various jurisdictions as a model of what can be done.
Yeah,
we're getting inquiries. We're getting inquiries now from people in Europe wanting to come to Kapiti Island. So obviously we're being seen potentially as a safe destination. If that's the sort of answer you're looking for, Jackie, that would be my response. I think we're being seen as a good model.
Look, thank you very much, John, and that's my last question, but I would just say that when you get your guides out there in winter, get them to put a hot water bottle in your backpacks. It's really a day. See you, John.
Councillor McCann.
Kia ora, John. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us. There's been a lot of focus about the role this project will have on Kapiti Island. I wonder, with your experience in the tourism sector, you could talk about what role this project might have on tourism in general to the Kapiti region.
Sure. Well, look, having been involved in the sector in Kapiti District for a long time, what is obvious to me is there's no central focus or no central reference point. And I'm not being critical of Council's absence of an eyesight, because I've got a different view on eyesights. But we used for a short while the old kiosk in McLean Park for one season. I can tell you from our experience of using that facility, the number of people that came and asking questions about what is there to do on the Kapiti Coast, where can we get to, how do we get to Ngā Manu, how do we get to Queen Elizabeth Park? They were all questions that have no immediate and direct connection to our business, but they were questions that had some impact on other businesses and some other attractions. I know that businesses on Paraparaumu Beach are often asked these questions, and again, it's not their business either. But my view is that we can generate much more positive tourism interaction with a site that has some role in that function. So it's hard to put a percentage on it, but all I can say is our experience is that an on-site manned facility is, as long as it can be run economically and not a drain on the community, and I've got views on that, I think that is possible. There are absolute advantages to having such a facility somewhere at Paraparaumu Beach. But where this thing's proposed to be, I think is obviously the best place.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Brabnov.
Thank you, John, for spending the time to come to talk to us today. So there's been a lot of conversation around the projected visitor numbers, and that in itself leans to the financial return. So, so with those numbers have been 58,000, do you think Kapiti Island can sustain an increase in visitor numbers like that?
Yes, I do. At the moment, we're running well below, and I mean well below, the maximum carrying capacity for the island. Now, the Department of Conservation could make things better by providing more facilities on the island. It may be an additional track here or there, and there are things that they could do in that regard. But the carrying capacity is definitely, we're not meeting the capacity by a long way, and I'm absolutely confident that those figures are doable. they're environmentally sustainable, and they're socially sustainable.
Thank you. So, off the top of your head, would you have any projections as to what the total capacity actually would be?
Well, all you need to do is multiply 130 by 363. That gives you the legal carrying capacity for the island.
So I suppose it's more about, as you mentioned, being sustainable for Kapiti Island. You know, so that when you do go there, you get a unique natural experience rather than tripping over people left, right, and centre.
Sure. But you know, although I spoke earlier about increasing the operating days through the year, so increasing the season by perhaps a month and a half each side of the peak season, the natural scheme of things for Kiwis is that not all of them will want to come to Kapiti Island in the winter. Lots of them go to Queensland in the winter. Lots of them go to the Pacific in winter, and they'll be doing that again once we come out of COVID. So the demand peaks, and it has traditionally peaked over 3 months of the year. That will continue. So we've got this peak during December, January, February. The other months, it's a roller coaster graph, really. It drops in the middle of the winter, numbers are less, and starts building up from August through to the peak of the season. So unless something really, really extraordinary happens, the possibility of 130 people coming to Kapiti Island every day is remote.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions. Thank you, John, for your submission. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Okay, thank you.
Right, we've got 4 more submitters, and after that, the 4th one will take a break. So the next one is David Perks.
David's just joining now. Good morning, David.
Good morning, kia ora.
Morning, David.
Hey, thank you for giving me some time to talk to you.
Good morning, David.
Can you hear me? Good morning, kia ora.
Yes.
I can hear you. Great to hear you. Hey, thank you for giving me some time to talk to you. Oh, can you hear me?
Off you go.
I can hear you. Great to hear you. Thank you for giving me.
Sorry, David, I think you've got the live stream going in the background, so you're getting a 20-second feedback delay.
I think I've got it sorted now.
Okay, thank you.
So David, welcome, and can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, David Perks, General Manager, Regional Development, Destination and Attraction at Wellington NZ, and within that I have our tourism group. I guess what I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking to you about is the tourism economy and what I suppose there's a lot of noise out there at the moment, and of course one of your big questions will be about how many people are going to come to Kapiti Coast, how many people are going to go to Parapuruma Beach, how many people are going to go to Kapiti Island, and we are in a position where we're in the middle of a crisis, but sometimes a crisis is an opportunity. And I was I suppose relieved a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, to be shown a graph of international tourism movements around the world since 1900. So quite a long time ago. And what you could see from it was that there's effectively been a very steady growth throughout the last 120 years, with some big bites taken out for things like the First World War and the Second World War and the Gulf oil crisis and 9/11 and the global financial crisis. But always within 2 or 3 years, international visitor movements have got back to normal. Now, we never know if a current crisis is going to be worse than the last, but if we think of some of those occasions, then there should be things to think about. I also think there's been a lot of focus, as you'll be aware from the news media, on domestic tourism, and of course there's two sides to domestic tourism right now. There is the fact that New Zealanders do want to get out and about. They've been locked down for a while, but also that there's a lot of effort going into promoting domestic tourism, which is telling New Zealanders to go to different places, to experience different things, and to enjoy the communities and to put money into the communities that make New Zealand what it is. And we, as an organisation, want every community in the Wellington region to be part of that, and of course, Kapiti being a very important constituent. Domestic tourism doesn't have the ups and downs that international tourism has. Domestic tourism tends to grow with the economy and with the population of New Zealand. But regardless of that, since the GFC, domestic visitor spend in New Zealand has increased from $11.5 billion per year to the year to March, $17.5 billion per year. So I think we can see that domestic tourism can be has a very important role to play, has always had a very important role to play in Kapiti, and we need the communities in the Wellington region to find ways of making more of that opportunity that's being provided. And another thing you will have heard of in the media is about this reimagining of tourism. Tourism has had some challenges. And the interesting thing is, places like Kapiti and indeed the North Island can be a lot of the solution that we can work together with Tourism New Zealand, with MBIE, with the Department of Conservation to address the concerns of over-tourism in Queenstown or the Southern Lakes District. Because reimagining of tourism needs to think about seasonality. So how do we get those visitors to come in the shoulder seasons or in the winter season? How do we make those things happen? It's also very clearly about dispersal, getting our visitors to go to more different places. And of course, whether that's the domestic market or the international market, getting visitors to go to different places is giving them the motivation, giving them the excitement, giving them the experiences which will make them go to different places. It's about slowing people down in those places so that they spend more in your local economy. The other interesting one that I'm hearing, and I caught a bit of what Jack was saying from Doc earlier on, is in terms of sustainable tourism, this will become a catchphrase again. We are absolutely certain. And sustainable tourism in New Zealand means making sure that where attractions are developed and promoted, that they are perhaps closer to where there is infrastructure, closer to where New Zealanders live, so that New Zealanders don't need to travel so far for experiences. And certainly I had a shout around the office to find out how many of the people in our office had been to Kapiti. Everybody has, of course. How many have been to Kapiti Island? Probably 5 out of 50 this morning. And I think we need to think about how we get more Wellingtonians to Kapiti Island, and then of course how people who live in our region become advocates for it. So for me, I think what you need to think about is, and I caught the last of what John was saying about, he talked about a central focal point. I think that is something that Kapiti is really missing, not just for the island, but for attracting visitors to Kapiti. And you know, I can look here in Wellington City and go, the year that Te Papa opened, there was a central focal point, and Wellington became a tourism destination in 1998. And that's the kind of option you have in front of you. Because right now, Kapiti doesn't have that focal point. There's lots of beautiful places. I was up on the beach at Paikakariki at the weekend myself, had a lovely walk. But if I didn't know about that, if I was a visitor to Kapiti, whether I was from Auckland or Timbuktu, I still need that focal point that says, this, I've arrived, this is where I find my information, and this is where I step out and explore a district from. So we have great confidence that tourism numbers will come back. We're already beginning to see domestic tourism numbers move. Again, when I was up your way at the weekend, went into tried to go into the cafes at Paikakariki, and they were all full. And those people were clearly people visiting from Wellington City, people who are wanting to get moving. So that's all I've got to say. Happy to take any questions. Like John, I'm pretty connected into that tourism community. I sit on the board of Tourism Industry Association and others. So if you've got questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, David. The first question is Councillor Hanford, then Councillor Compton.
Thanks.
Cool. Kia ora, David. Thank you for coming in to speak with us today. My question is quite broad and general, I guess, but just around how do we balance, or yeah, how do we find that balance between an interest and a focus on growing tourism, with also ensuring our own community feels like these are their spaces and spaces that they can enjoy? And how do we ensure that any projects we undertake in this area, and the Gateway obviously potentially being one of those, how do we ensure that it represents both what would bring people here, but also represents the vision and the hope for our community and having this kind of a building? So I just wonder how you see those things balancing.
I think the most important thing is that whatever is created tells an authentic story that everybody will be able to identify with. And if stories are told in an authentic manner, people who are local to those stories will be proud of those stories. And if they're told in an authentic manner, people who are visitors will find those stories really interesting and want to get to know the locals. And so getting that embrace between local and visitor is about authenticity. So, you know, if the proposal in front of you was an enormous, you know, multi-storied, massive building, I'd be really concerned, because that wouldn't be authentic to the story of the coast or of the island. So it's getting that proportionality right as well. But giving people a sense of arrival and giving locals somewhere to be proud of, tell the stories of the place is really important.
So do you see it then being really important for those authentic stories and that kind of linked up story across the coast to be developed in conjunction with this, or do you see that having to come before, or what kind of stage do you see those authentic stories having to be tied into this whole process, just to make sure that it does fit into a wider story, as has been mentioned already this morning?
Yeah, sure. I think it's hand in hand, and part of that is because developing ideas together is the best way to do anything. But also there's some pragmatics about it. You know, there is the opportunity of central government funding to help Kapiti Coast on this journey, and whilst you know, you shouldn't just take anything that's given. If that opportunity is there, it should be considered very, very seriously. But also, I think it's a lot easier to engage communities in that storytelling process if they've got a kind of a goal and a vision they're working towards. You know, they know that it's going to land somewhere.
Cool. Kia ora, thanks for that, David. That's all.
Councillor Compton, then McCann, then Coots.
Kia ora, David. My first question is, how did you know those people in the cafes up in Paikakariki were Wellingtonians or from out of the region? Do we dress differently up here?
The smell, mate.
I happen to recognise a few of them, actually. So I actually did end up getting in one of the cafes because the people who came out were people I knew who live in Karori.
That's good. I accept we always have a handful of out-of-towners coming here, but I think it's useful to deal in actual data rather than amusing anecdotes when we're considering this serious issue at the moment. Because are you aware, in the last half an hour, Statistics New Zealand has announced 37,500 jobs were lost in April alone. It's 1 in 60 New Zealanders. That's with the wage subsidy going, and it's the single greatest monthly drop in 20 years. Do you not accept that with this massive economic crisis we've got that's been touted as the largest since the Great Depression, with unemployment forecast to hit nearly 9.8%, and combined with the behaviour changing impacts that we're seeing from COVID-19 and that we're going to want to continue beyond a vaccine becoming available, that there are going to be negative impacts on tourism, and we can't necessarily look back to these previous events as a necessary guide for what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think I was aware of those figures, and I think that obviously New Zealand and New Zealanders are in for a very challenging time. I think that there's 2 points I'd bear on those. Typically in a year, I think New Zealanders spend about $10.5 billion offshore on holidays. Now, I'm not pretending for a moment that New Zealanders are necessarily going to pick up that and spend it in New Zealand, but some New Zealanders will do that, and that means that there is an opportunity. And I think because Kapiti is accessible to a good size of population in the lower North Island. That it means that those people who would normally travel further, may normally get on an aeroplane, will choose to drive to different places now. And I would see that this kind of proposition is, or the proposition that Kapiti could be, is exactly where New Zealanders will, who can afford it. And then as the economy does slowly come back, those more who can afford it will choose to look to get those experiences that historically they've looked for overseas.
Thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Kia ora. Thank you, David. I was really glad to hear you talk about authentic stories, and my question relates around your comment around a central focal point. Do you see this just as a central focal point for getting across to the island, or do you see it as a potential focal point for tourism to be marketed beyond our region?
I see it as a focal point for giving people a place to stop in Kapiti and make decisions about what they can do on the coast. I think at the moment, you know, if you kind of think of it in your own terms, you can either drive through fast or you can make a choice to stop. And there is a good reason to stop, because if you are coming down State Highway 1, it's the first place you see the sea for a very long way. It's the Kapiti coast. So people want to go to the beach, want to see the sea, but then it's a kind of what next thing. And I think there's every opportunity for you know, people from Wellington City, people from the rest of New Zealand, and then, you know, in the fullness of time, people from other countries. It will give them a place to go, right, okay, this is what I can do here. There's Namanu, there's the beach, there's the cars, and there's Kapiti Island. And if it also gives people a more straightforward opportunity to participate and buy a ticket for Kapiti Island, I think the data the team have got from the council gives the impression that that would be a winner as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Coates and Councillor Halliday.
Oh, Marina, David, good to see you again. And if I could just start by saying I've been involved in a number of different capacities around the table with you, and always respected your frankness, your advice, and your experience. So with that, I have been pretty open around the fact that I believe in this project. I like the idea of the very thing that you talk about is opening up the opportunities on the Kapiti coast. But to be honest, I'm struggling with some of the detail in the report today, more really around the operational figures. And I do note that we've had responses saying that more information will come with, you know, if we approve this today, it's simply progressing it. The question that I have is, in your experience with projects like this, not necessarily on a beachfront, but just a project, when councils are doing this, how do they normally track around things like projected revenue? And then after that, I've got 3 other questions.
Yeah, I think there's a really good question in that, James. So the first one that I would be, so let me think. First one would be, projects like this can make or break a place. My reflection on a number of projects that have happened in the Wellington region would be that the getting to a successful operating model has been too often expected to be immediate. So first week you're open, it's working. That's not the reality. And any business person would tell you that it takes time to build up an opportunity provided by an investment. And so, you know, what I've seen is that it probably takes, depending on the kind of the seasons of the year, probably takes 2 to 3 years to get to a point where a place is humming along in the manner that you would expect it to. And it's important to have a very carefully articulated plan to accelerate that to that point as quickly as possible. It's not an immediate open the doors and people walk in. unless you're something like a Te Papa scale investment, which clearly this
Thank
is.
you. I'll move to my next question, but just I guess for your information, the report talks about breaking even in 6 years' time, and my concern is that it wouldn't even, with the projected revenue expected and the climate that we're in, that we would not potentially meet that. And I use examples like Zealandia, which leads to my next question around other sites or examples where a decision like this has been made today, where I wasn't so much thinking where it broke a community, but where it actually, you know, and looking back, has been a huge success for that community. No pressure if you can't think of anything, but I'd be interested in.
I think Zealandia is probably, you know, a fantastic example, and clearly the Wellington City Council had to adjust the model around it. But I think if you look at the number of visitors Zealandia gets now, it now meets the goals that were set out when the visitor centre was built. The conservation and sustainability outcomes that it targeted are tremendous, both from a scientific point of view, but also from a community point of view, in terms of the enriching lives through having a lot more birds in the sky, which is fantastic. But it's also put a new story on the map. And I think this is where it really comes back to Councillor Hanford's question about Zealandia has taken a bit of land and that was rough and uncared for, and converted it into a fantastic storytelling place that means that locals, New Zealanders and international visitors go away saying, hey, this is part of New Zealand's story. And to me, Zealandia is the best island sanctuary with a fence around it. The difference for you guys is you've got a real island and the real thing. So I think that story is so strong. Finding a way to tell it is really important for the community and for the economy.
Thanks for the response, and it wasn't what I expected, because I had seen Zealandia in a negative sense in terms of the fiscal issues that council had around that, but you have brought a different, I guess, angle to that, and I appreciate you know, what you've raised. It certainly gives food for thought. The next question I had was the economic benefit or return into the community. The report talks about that spin-off, people filling up with gas, grabbing a coffee. I understand that, but again, your experience and your involvement around the region when facilities have been built or you know, events have been underway, the actual impact on that economic spend in the surrounding community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different, and again, you know, it might be viewed as a different scale, but we did a little bit of work a while ago that looked at the volume of accommodation in Wellington City. And the volume, because it's a predominantly domestic market, the volume of accommodation in Wellington City has grown steadily over the years, whereas Queenstown and Rotorua and Auckland are all kind of zigzagging in growth. Right? Wellington's been very steady. But what we were able to see was that when a new visitor attraction of some sort or other, so Te Papa being an example, the regional stadium being an example, when those things were invested in, you could see new investment coming in to the city in terms of hotels being built. And interestingly, over in the Wairarapa, there was a period of time where Greytown had a very deliberate investment strategy in it from South Wairarapa District Council. And you can then see, if you look back through the commercial accommodation monitor, how suddenly the availability there, the number of beds available in Greytown went up, and now trade successfully. So I think there are good ways of being able to link the investment you might make in getting that kind of focal point to then how you could see commercial investment around the focal point, which obviously can mean more rates to the council, but also once you then have those businesses then become an attraction in themselves.
Thank you. And look, my last question, I appreciate I've taken up a bit of your time, bit of the time in the meeting. I know that you've been involved with meetings, Zoom meetings with ministers and so forth. What is, I mean, there's I guess a feeling out there that council should be tightening their belts. What's the narrative or the message that you're hearing from central government around organisations like your own and ours, and whether we invest, I guess, or tighten the purse strings and pull rates back in and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think no one's suggesting that money should be thrown in the wind, but I think this is a period, and you know, some of the indications, say around the Provincial Growth Fund that were indicated in the budget, are very much about trying to make sure that all parts of central and local government investment are really leveraging each other hard. And so, you know, the work that we're doing with Tourism New Zealand, my colleague Anna sits on their kind of steering group for the domestic marketing activity. In fact, I could hear her a little while ago in the room next door to me on a Zoom call with them. And that's about Tourism New Zealand are going to do domestic marketing, but then each region is being carefully jigsawed into it, so we all leverage the investment to make the most of the opportunity. And this is just the same, I think.
Okay, thanks very much for your responses, David.
Thanks, James.
Councillor Holiday.
Hi, David. Great to see you, and you know, a lot of really good information there. I've just got 4 questions. In your opinion, there are 2 conversations potentially happening here. One of them is a gateway to Kapiti Island. Another one is a gateway to the Kapiti coast. There's been conversations that we're trying to put too much into this space, and perhaps we should have one that's specialised, and we should be looking at another one perhaps somewhere else, or perhaps close, that's also specialised in that area. What's your thoughts on that?
One focal point would be my answer. We did a bit of research around, and then I was on the eyesight board for a while, a few years back now, and there was a bit of research done about where should your eyesight be, and the answer was very clearly, you need to go to the place, you need to go to the one place and put your information there that you can finger post people out to all the other places from. As soon as you split it up, you confuse people and create expense.
Thank you. Next question is, and I might be wrong on this, I'm seeking some clarity. We as I'm aware as a council, and perhaps Mayor Guru can correct me if I'm wrong on this, we pay $500,000 to either yourselves as regional council or to Go Wellington with regards to promotion of Kapiti. Is that to the regional council, or is that to Wellington NZ?
We send it to the regional council.
That's to the regional council.
It's a tax.
Right?
It's a rate by the regional council.
Right. Okay. That's collected by the regional council to promote Kapiti. Is that right?
Mm.
Okay. That's
so
cool.
so the rate is collected by the regional council from the whole region, of course, and Kapiti pays its part, and that's for all economic development activity, not just promotion.
Okay, so leads me on to my next question. You know, you as representing the regional council classify Kapiti as a first-class experience here. So if we are unsuccessful with our application to the PGF fund, is the regional council prepared to put money towards this proposal?
Hey, Martin, I'm not the regional council. We're the Economic Development Agency, which is a council-controlled organisation. So I can't answer on behalf of the regional council.
Sorry, I just had you as GM Regional Development. Sorry, my mistake.
Well, no, that's fine. And we're not empowered to do bricks and mortar stuff. That's not part of what we're empowered to do as a council-controlled organisation. But certainly, this is the kind of project which we would advocate very hard for, because we believe that Kapiti will benefit socially, culturally, economically from and indeed environmentally from doing this particular thing better.
Lovely, thank you very much. And the last question is, in relation to your comparison to Zealandia, look, I appreciate the fantastic things that Zealandia has done for our region, nationally almost, with regards to regeneration of bird life, etc. I get to enjoy that out here on the Kapiti coast. But that's the ratepayer for Wellington's carrying quite a substantial ongoing cost to that, which as a large council they can wear. I've got no issue around that. Well, maybe they can't, I don't know. But we're a smaller council, we're a lot smaller as a council. And if we've got ongoing cost in relation to running this facility, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder for us to cover that cost, you see, or it's going to be more of an impact on our ratepayer. Would you get a comment on that?
Yeah, I think clearly the scale of the development that's being proposed is very different to Zealandia. I think the Zealandia investment started at about 25 million, and that was, what, 15 years ago. So it's very, very different scale of investment. But I do think, the lessons that Zealandia learned, or when, they would still talk about, would be about making sure that you don't overscale what you do, but that what you do, you do exceptionally well and very professionally. And I think that's the trick. I think the guys at Zealandia would probably say that their visitor centre, if any of you've been, that they think it's a bit too big, and it could have been smaller. But I'm not saying yours is too big or too small. I'm just saying you've got to scale it right, and you've got to but what you do has to be excellent, so that when people arrive there, they know they've arrived at this focal point, and they then know how they can go and spend money in your businesses and tourism attractions and enjoy your environment.
Thank you, David. I was more alluding to the ongoing cost than the actual upfront capital cost as such, because that's one of the issues that has been raised, because this is a new part to the equation.
Yeah, so they've got their OPEX pretty much sorted now, but they're still, the reason the council really stepped back in and made it a CCO was because of the capital cost up front, which was still, I think the council's, it was a council and government thing, and it was, I think the council put in like 12 of the 20.
Lovely. Thank you very much, David.
Thanks, Martin.
Councillor Compton.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that Zealandia issue, and you saying that they've got their operational spending sorted, because just looking at their latest annual report in 2018, had they not had $980,000 from Wellington City Council, they would have been $800,000 in deficit. And the only reason they weren't in deficit in 2019, if they didn't have that council grant, was because they had a one-off funding grant of $700,000 from a charitable trust. So, I mean, the fundamental issue with Zealandia is that it's never met its visitor targets, and visitor targets, the visitor number growth is central to the business case that we're considering for the Gateway, in terms of it not being an ongoing financial drag to council.
Yeah, okay. I'm not entirely across the Zealandia financials, but I do know that the business case said that they would get 140,000 visitors a year, and that's about where they're at these days.
It's taken 24 years to reach, bear in mind. That was their original. So I was looking at this over the last few days. So back in 1995 or 6, when it was, they predicted 137,000 visitors. They got 89,000 in the first year. So they've had this chronic about 50% overstating of their goals over 24 years. I mean, that's a long time to be getting this wrong.
Yeah, I can see where you're going. I guess that there is a difference here in that I think part of Zealandia's challenge has been the entry price into Zealandia. So I think it's how the components that make a development commercially successful will be different for the proposal that you're looking at, and it's making sure that I suppose the tenants have viable businesses within the development, as opposed to Zealandia was the tenant of its own business.
Would you accept that Zealandia has better access to a larger pool of visitors than Kapiti Island does? It's cheaper, it's easier to get to. There are a lot more visitors that go through Wellington.
It's different, certainly. I think one of the big challenges, in fact, one of the challenges to the business case that was worked against for years and years with Zealandia was an expectation that people who came to the city would necessarily go to Zealandia. Like of everybody who came to the city, 60% would go to Zealandia, and clearly that was just wrong, because a lot of people who come to Wellington City come to do business and come overnight and have a meeting and go home again. Now, understanding the dynamics of that, Kapiti Coast District obviously does have visitors who come for business, but has a lot more people coming for recreation, whether that's out of the city or from further afield, and has a lot of people who come for to see friends and family, who are then more likely to participate in recreational activities. So there was a critical flaw in the Zealandia business case that presumed upon every visitor to Wellington having recreational time.
I guess that's my concern, is around there's a fundamental flaw in some of the assumptions behind this business case. So it's quite interesting to hear you talk about the flaws that existed in Zealandia's one when we are talking about two nature sanctuaries. So thank you, that's quite useful.
Right, we've got Councillor Prabnov, then Martin Holliday again.
So thank you again. So thank you, David. So I've just eaten some peanut butter and stuck in it. So one question that you might be able to answer is, so this visitor centre is going to be free for people to enter, whereas the one at Zealandia is actually, you actually got to pay to get in there to see it, or to go, to go through there, and it's a destination in itself rather than it's a starting point to go somewhere else. So can you give some, I suppose, some of your insights around how you can actually, what the benefits are of a building like that doesn't actually charge for an entrance, and how the spin-offs are actually, how there's monetary spin-off and to the community and to the area.
Yeah, so I think that there's two things. One is one would be that when people get to a place, that they'll have some idea about how long they're going to spend in that place, and the length of time they actually spend will be driven by what there is to do. And I think we could all probably think of good examples where you go somewhere and then you go, oh, so what do I do next? And you get back in the car because you don't know what to do next. So I think there's a really, I've got an interesting contrast. So in the Wellington Eyesight Visitor Centre, we're fortunate, obviously, in a big city, so it's a bit different, but we get about 400,000 visitors a year go through that. And that gives us the opportunity to make sales of local product, to advise people on where they can buy different things in the city, and of course, where they can then go out around the region and find different things around the region. And typically, people in the eyesight spend about 16 or 17 minutes. Now, that's not very long, but actually, if that's time talking to us and getting information, that's then that's information they've absorbed, and they go out and enjoy the place. The opposite is the cable car carries about 370,000 visitors to the top a year, and at the top, there's a deficit of information for a variety of reasons, which I don't need to go into. So people go up the cable car thinking they're going to spend about an hour, and typically they spend 12 minutes. So I think if you give people the right stories and the right information, you can drive from this type of investment people spending longer and spending more money in your place. And the alternative is that you don't.
Yeah. So it's my understanding that this is not actually being thought of as an eyesight. That's the first point. The second one is too, if you actually, there's been lots of conversations about it being a stepping point to Kapiti Island. If you're going to go to Kapiti Island, you've actually made that decision before you get there, rather than when you get there.
So I'd have 2 points. So absolutely, I wouldn't. If you were saying, do we need to have a full-blown eyesight? I'd be like, no.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that it's not actually going to be necessarily selling the whole district.
Yeah, but it can be a place that disperses information. And if you do that cleverly, you can sell the whole district. sorry, somebody just walked into my meeting room. If you, I think information dispersal is important. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
So to go to Kapiti, so obviously Kapiti
yeah.
Island's been discussed a lot today.
Yeah.
You've already made that decision to go there if you end up in that building, or a proposed building.
Yeah, so obviously there's the need for the schedule to allow for it, but one would like to think that there would be the ability to actually motivate people to make a decision on the spot to go, actually, yeah, I want to go over to the island. It looks like a beautiful day and I can see the island out there. Now, obviously people do make bookings online, but if there is the opportunity to move that market, then there's a whole lot of opportunity for those businesses. And if altogether that means people are more likely to stay a night at Kapiti, then that should be seriously thought about.
So then if this is actually, potentially a marketing opportunity, are there different ways you can do that without building a big building? So I suppose what it's doing is it's marketing businesses on the mainland rather than, which tends to be more online at this point in time. And I suppose the question is whether some of those operators on the island should actually be having a financial stake in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would. My concentration would be it's about telling authentic stories that then lead people to make purchasing decisions rather than just being. You're right. There's lots of digital promotion tools, and those are important too. But getting those authentic stories that inspire people to spend and stay longer is really important. I would suggest, and I do think. Creating that focal point at a place which is such a natural focal point for the Kapiti Coast District makes sense, because at the moment you don't have one.
Yeah, well, I suppose to the other question, I know I'm sort of taking up a bit of time here too, but so if you don't live in Paparamu, you may not necessarily think it is the natural focal point.
No,
whether at the beginning, either end of the coast, might be potentially a better place. I'm, just throwing that out there right now.
Yeah, but I think at the moment, the problem with going either end becomes pragmatic, doesn't it? That you would need to invest at either end. People, as I've mentioned before, I believe the coast is the focal point, and if that's the central, easily accessible place, then to me it would seem to be the right place. Yeah,
well, I think also too we have to be very clear about what the role is as well. But no, thank you for your thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think the mayor's just been muted, and I've been unmuted. David, look, you're certainly
Martin, all I'm saying is that you've had a few goes. I've got three other public.
I've got one question, that's it, and that'll be my last one. David, look, you talk about a visitor centre drawing people, and that being a strategic decision. Well, I've mentioned that this place could be two options. Are you aware of the Nahina Wellsong / Nahina Park up towards Coastlands at all? Because that's been touted as being an iconic sculpture. They're looking at our multicultural centre there. So one would think from a strategic perspective, if you were planning, that might be a bit more suitable as your landing point, as your gateway to Kapiti. I'd be interested in your comments.
Yeah, I know some about it, Martin. I think, it's kind of incumbent upon us to see all ideas as good ideas, because if they all happen, then everywhere will be great. And so it's probably, if the bit of me that is unsure about that proposal is its physical location away from the sea, if I'm honest. I do think, as I say, it is the coast that makes the Kapiti Coast in the view, I think, of New Zealanders, what it is, and so that would be my concern about that development, without knowing too much about it.
And look, I hear what you're saying, because the whole port of it is iconic and it's visible from the expressway. But thank you, David, much appreciated.
Thanks.
Thank you, David, for your extensive time in engaging with the councillors.
No problem.
Much
Thanks.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Right. We've got 3 more, then we absolutely need to take a break.
Mr. Guru, Maguru, we don't have Christopher Ruth. He's left the meeting, but we do have Sharon and Darren Hunter.
Okay, then Sharon. Sharon.
He's just come now. Sharon, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You can start speaking now.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Some of you may not know who I am. I'm Sharon Hunter, and I'm the chair of the Paraparaumu Beach Business Association. You should all know that our business community and I have been big supporters of our new biosecurity building / visitor centre in McLean Park for the last few years. We've participated in consultation so actively, everywhere we can, we've been involved. At our first and only advisory group meeting on the 15th of March this year, we were all assured that we and the wider community, and for me, that was our business community, would have the opportunity to discuss and debate the designs for the future building or buildings prior to a final decision being made. So this did not happen.
I just said it doesn't matter. If you want to do it, then do it.
So I made a commitment to our business community that they would be kept informed of the process and also have the ability to voice opinion and give feedback. This opportunity was taken away during the final stages of the process. However, I had to meet my commitment to the business community, so I created a survey, which I also opened up to the wider community. I've presented the results of the survey to you all on Tuesday as a small snapshot, and then again yesterday after it completed. The survey was completely open, transparent, and has been given back to the community as well. I'd like to just summarise a couple of things. The survey had a total of 459 responses in 72 hours. It's a pretty overwhelming response for such a thing here on the coast. Of the 459 responses, there were 66 business owners just here at Paraparaumu Beach. I just want to go through a couple of things. Question 6, where it says, will you benefit from more visitors? 41% of our businesses here said no. On question 7, if you will benefit from more visitors, is it a good idea to invest in the building? 48.8% said no. Do you believe we need a gateway building at this time? 47% said no, and then 49.45% of the total surveyed respondents said no. Question 12, are you okay using $2.4 million of ratepayer money? That's all our money. 63% of our businesses said no, and 68.2% of the total respondents surveyed said no. And question 13, where it says, are you comfortable topping up on the expenses? 66% of our businesses said no, and 70.64% of survey respondents said no. I personally believe we should have a fantastic facility at the beach, and I've always voiced my opinion on that. For all the reasons that people have mentioned here today from all of their different areas. However, it is not up to me, nor is it up to 10 people on a panel. It's up to our whole community. I believe KCDC were so close to having the community buy-in. They just missed the most important part of the process, and that was asking the community. I've now completed my commitment to the community, and it's now up to you, our elected councillors, to make that educated decision on how our community wants them to vote for this project. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Janet Holbrook, then Councillor Compton.
Hi Sharon, thanks for all your work that you've done on this. Really, outstanding, and so many hours put in. And thanks for carrying out the survey, which I actually found really informative. So a couple of questions about the survey. So I'm a bit surprised about the results from businesses saying that increased visitor numbers wouldn't have a positive impact on their businesses, because it seems to me that usually businesses would probably benefit from more people being around. did you check that the people who answered that question were actually business owners? Like when you answered no to the yes to the question, were only those people allowed to answer those questions, or was that the general public who answered that?
No, honestly, you really have, I have to take it as at face value that they answered honestly. That's all I can do. And I understand what you're saying is that a lot of people would perhaps, why did they say they wouldn't benefit from an increase in visitors? I think also the other thing that I'm taking from this is lots of people are really unsure. They're really unsure about what's going to happen in the COVID-19 area. That's all I can say on that.
Yeah, so my question was, do you think that question, or what I was trying to ask is, do you think that question was answered by business owners or by all of the survey recipients?
That question was answered by, that when I narrowed it down, those percentages were just from the people who had said they were business owners.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's all I can say. I can't guarantee that they they ticked the wrong box. Yeah.
Also, there was another question which was, do you think it's important for the council to benefit from the potential of getting the money from the Provincial Growth Fund? Could you remind me what the results were to that question? I was just trying to look for it now.
Yeah, so it was quite high, but I think that comes back to people not understanding. Because some of the comments you would have seen, I can flick through and find you the exact thing, but it was quite high. And I think it's because they don't understand. I think they think we could get the PGF fund, and if we decide we don't spend that money on a visitor centre, a gateway, whatever it is, that we could just put it to something else. So I think that needs some more talking about so that people understand about the actual guidelines, I don't know, restrictions about the PGF money. I think it comes from a lack of understanding. But also, I think that also says that people do want to potentially do the project with money that comes from something like the PGF.
Right. So I can't zoom across to see, but the yes or other or don't know far outweigh on that question.
Yeah. So if you added up the ones that said yes and then the ones that said sort of in a few in a little while or whatever, yeah, if you added them up, yep. Becomes more than a no.
People saying other, and then it says please specify on all the questions. Do you know what that means and why they answered other?
Oh, so that was just to give them a place where they could make comment. So when you went into other, that's where all the responses were, all the written comments were in there.
So that figure doesn't tie into the 100% of responses on that question. It's not a percentage. Just trying to see.
Sorry, I missed that.
So just one final question. I'm just really interested in the survey, and I think it's really useful. So apologies for the number of questions that I'm asking. So my final question is, if people misunderstood the question on the PGF fund, do you think it's possible that they misunderstood some of the background on the other questions as well?
Of course. Oh, absolutely. Of course. And I think that the questions weren't by any means perfect, but we didn't have any time to do anything else. And I'd be happy if you want to give me some more questions, I can make another one and we can go again and actually get some more confirmation and actually, make it more to the point that the people who actually submitted here do not want you to spend the money unless you are fiscally responsible. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think it's been very informative and very useful. So thank you for the time you put into it.
Yeah, no worries.
Councillor Compton.
Oh, kia ora, Sharon. Thank you for your work in creating this and the results of the survey that you've shared with us. I think it's hugely useful given the lack of wider public consultation around what's a proposal that's really important to our community. My question is, do you think there's merit in delaying any decision on whether to proceed with this and, for a week or two, and for council to actually go out and try and run some sort of quickfire public consultation on it?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think you could. Some of those comments that people were making were coming from a really angry community. If you want to, I certainly think that we need something here that gets everybody's buy-in and gets them excited and all about the stories and everything else. I truly believe in all of that, but you need to actually speak to the rest of the community and get them to agree with what we're going to do. And I also think that we need to actually do it fast because I also think that, yes, there are opportunities with the PGF, but maybe we have to face the fact that maybe the community just don't want to do it now, and be prepared to sit with that decision. That's the other thing. Let them be heard, and if they say, let's make it smaller, let's make it smaller. If they say, let's not do it for 2 years, then seriously, you know, we all need to go, yep, that's what they've said. They've said, let's just wait. And we have to do that. And I think that that's the place that we need to start to get the community back being a community and being really excited about this one really fantastic project.
Cool, thank you very much.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for being a voice for the local community down there. I just wanted to tease out one of your comments that you made initially. You mentioned that there was a missing point between how this, we nearly got there and there was a missing point. Could I suggest that or I shouldn't suggest, when the feasibility report recommendations came back and then we moved to the next step, this went straight to the Gateway Governance Group. How did the local advisory group fit into all this? Because you're a member of that, is that correct?
Yes. Well, they didn't. It was, you know, that was meant to be the beginning of to share the designs that had been submitted, and then for the advisory group to go out to the community and the community consultation to begin, you know, get feedback and blah, blah, blah. That stage of it just got, we didn't have time because of trying to submit for PGF. And that's kind of what I was saying. Surely we could ask the PGF, can you just give us a bit more time because of the COVID so that we can do due diligence and speak to the community?
Thank you. My second thing was, and this is sort of somewhat a response to Janet as well. I've had a business down at the beach, and I appreciate the dynamic and the disjointedness that represents. From my perspective, you know, the operators went at first thing in the morning and came back sort of later in the day, which sort of missed the middle of the day. But can you perhaps explain the dynamic of the township to where this is looking at being situated and the dynamic between those two areas?
Yeah, so I suppose to go to the biosecurity centre and to go to the island is one thing, and that keeps it quite separate. So there's only some of our businesses that would maybe benefit, and that comes back to that question that Janet was saying, is that when they go to check in to go to the boat, it's, you know, between I think 8 and 9 in the morning. Lots of people just arrive in their car, park up, they've got their lunch and head to the operator. So the businesses don't see any benefit from that. So if we're getting people who are staying in Wellington, and I know Wellington is promoting, you know, you can go to Kapiti for the day and we can take you out in a van. So if those people are coming, the business community does miss out on that. Potentially if they catch a train or a bus, and I've seen it, they'll catch the train, the bus, and then they get the bus right outside my house to go back to the train, you know, at 3:30 in the afternoon. And they're not coming to our businesses either because they want to get back on the train and get back into Wellington. The ones who are potentially staying here, that might be a little bit different. We do get some, obviously, economic growth or, you know, contribution because they're staying in our accommodation. The issue we have here at the beach is lots of our motels now have people who are staying in that are homeless. So, and I don't know whether they're actually going to be able to accommodate people to come and stay for maybe a couple of nights. So the way that it works is that our business community doesn't all benefit from the Kapiti Island experience. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it sort of does, because I mean, I think we can all appreciate the dynamic of having Kapiti Island there and the experience there as a draw card to the area. It's just how do we capitalise on that, I guess, and how do we educate our punters, for whatever better word of putting it, to spend at the beach and trying to get that dynamic, in my opinion, close to the beach.
We need to have the connection between the two. I don't know, make it so it stands out a lot, so that the connection is there. And
Thanks,
that's why also in the consultation we talked about that we wouldn't want to have other businesses in the facility, whatever that may be, that would actually be competition to any of our beach businesses. So, you know, we talked about that and that was heard, which is great. And so that comes back to the concern, perhaps if we can't get cafes and ice cream sellers in there, who's going to pay to lease the building?
Cool. Thanks, Sharon.
No
Okay,
worries.
I've got Councillor Coates and then Councillor Buswell.
Hi, Sharon.
Oh, yeah.
Look, just a question following on from Councillor Compton's question around delaying this for a week or two. I had, just due to the nature of the Zoom meeting, submitted a number of questions to council staff prior to the meeting, and that was actually one of my questions. And the response was due to the PGF process and the timing, that there would be a risk we would sort of miss the boat, excuse the pun. The other option is that council could approve the plans to move to the next step today, but still leave an option in there to pull the plug on the project if the operating model, the revenue and so forth was proven to not be satisfactory. So in direct response to that question, in similar vein to Gwyn's, would you support that approach if it allowed further discussion, talk about the designs and engagement with the community?
I'd have to say no, because if you agree on the plans, then the plans go into council and they're pretty, you know, for the resource consent, and to actually change those, I think there's significant work to be undertaken. So if the community came back and said, from further consultation, actually that building, we just want to have a biosecurity area there and we only want it to be half the size, the whole resource consent application and everything needs to change, which comes at a cost to everybody. So I think that there would be no benefit in doing that. I think you would have to just seriously just stop, say, right, this is a really important thing and we need to put all guns blazing to get out into the community and tell them why we need to have it, how it's going to pay for itself. And if we can see merit and it's fiscally viable and, you know, and show that it's going to be a great success, then yes, then go forward. But like I say, be prepared that we could potentially just go, actually, it's not the time.
It's out
I don't know. You know, I could be completely wrong, and everybody said, "Yep, let's go."
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Councillor Buswell.
Hi, Sharon. Thanks for all the effort that you've put into this project in working with the community. In terms of the way tourists come into Paraparaumu Beach and then they head off to the Kapiti Island and come back and then basically disband from there, rather than spending time in Paraparaumu Beach and supporting local retailers, do you think that there is potentially a scheduling issue in terms of if those boats left more frequently or at different times, there would be more opportunity for people to hang around and spend in Paraparaumu? And within this proposal, there has been talk of dawn and also dusk trips out to the island. And so from, you know, like if you're a day tripper and you came up, you had your fish and chips for lunch on the beach and you saw an amazing building at the end of the McLean Park, you wandered down, had a look, oh my gosh, I can actually hop on the boat today. It's a beautiful flat day. I'll just buy a ticket and get on the boat. And you can pick up that extra trade as opposed to having to pre-book everything in advance, not knowing what the weather's like and that sort of thing.
I think that yes and no. Yeah, the schedule works great for the operators and that's how it should be. I think that there's potential to actually do some marketing to say that you could actually pick your lunch up from Ben's Buns. You know, like there's some opportunity that's being missed by not having that collaboration between everybody and having a Kapiti story, so to speak. You know, we're all going to the island, let's go to Ben's Buns and Cafe Lane and wherever you're going to go, you know, the fourth where to get your drink before you hop on the boat or go and get chairs. But also I think that the potential to have more businesses based on the water is, yes, is there. And I think we need that. And I think that if we have an area where we can tell people that there is a boat that's going out to do sunset tours, you know, to the island or whatever, buy your ticket now and come back at 6 or 8 or whatever time it is, then I think there's great opportunity to do things like that. But it's also that chicken and egg thing, isn't it, too?
Yeah.
But, yeah. And I think that will come with whatever it is that we decide to make the building or buildings or whatever. I think those opportunities will come, most definitely. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't seem to be any more questions. Thank you, Sharon, for your time.
Thank you very much.
And we've got the last submitter, Darren Hunter. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, hello. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Cool, cool. Okay, so I'm sitting at the other side of the desk from Sharon. She's just gone to the toilet. So my name's Darren Hunter. I live 400 metres from the proposed site at the Gateway. I'm also a member of the Business Association. So I wanted to cover off a few things. Obviously, I've been involved in some of the stuff that has been going on social media. So I wanted to make a few, I wanted to raise a few questions more than anything. I'm not giving the answers to those. I just want to raise some questions, some things that came to mind for me, trying to compile something to say today. So I'd probably first off by saying, I personally believe the final stages of the Gateway process were rushed, and there was very little consideration given to the wider community involved in selecting a design. Now, we had a design process and it went straight to a governance group or panel to make the decision. I think the 4 designs that were submitted, the understanding was that it would go to the wider community via the advisory panel to have a more in-depth discussion and basically pick the ideas to pieces and come up with some solutions about things that weren't quite working. But that process was completely removed and we ended up with just one design, and that's what we've ended up with at the moment. So I don't really want to dwell on that. I just wanted to actually ask a few more questions and perhaps some people can feed into that. So my first thing is, I've written here, does KCDC consider this project an essential service with the expectation that it will lose money until it no longer loses money? In other words, is it a business venture that pays for itself? Or is it a community service that the expectation is, like the aquatic centre, that it will continually be topped up by ratepayers' money? That's one of my questions. Are we treating it as a business venture, or we are treating it as a community essential service? So around those things, I wanted to say that we don't have an economic strategy finalised. We also do not have an a tourism strategy finalised. There's also no Kapiti story. So I hear a lot from the tourism type people saying, oh, we've got a story to tell, but there's no direction from council. So we don't have a council with a vision whilst we're jumping straight to potentially a $5 million expenditure. So I just wanted to raise those issues with the councillors to say, well, if we haven't got the foundation right, why are we jumping to something else purely because of the PGF timelines? The next thing I wanted to ask and maybe make councillors aware, am I correct to think that by you voting today to proceed to the PGF money for 2.2, does that automatically trigger council also to approve, on piggybacking from the fact that you have to stump up some money, are you piggybacking the fact that you also agree to then earmark 2.2 million of council money to the PGF fund? In other words, if the application is successful, does that mean they say yes to 2.2 and straight away council have already made the decision that the 2.2 is part of that vote? Or is it we apply, we do nothing until we get the okay or the denial or the turn down, and then we vote again to then put our $2.2 million in? So the next thing I've said, if the application is successful, are you able to return the funds if it becomes too prohibitive? So whether it's running costs, whether it's the construction costs, or whether it's just community objection. So if you get the 2.2, can you give it back in the event that it doesn't go? Because I think Sharon touched on it. Do people think that the $2.2 million could then be moved to another project? I personally believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the 2.2 is obviously earmarked specifically for that project. We can't take that money and put it into whale song. We can't put it into the Marine Discovery Centre. It has to stay within that project. So maybe, and I think Sharon touched on it on the survey, whilst it would have been nice to have more time to create the questions a little bit clearer, maybe people think that it's a 2.2 that we can do with what we want. I don't think that's the case. So Another concern, given that I've been following this, is that at the design stage, the budget was 4 million. I was told that 2 million was allocation for around the construction of a building, and the additional 2 million was for site works. In other words, the upgrade of the stream, the obviously car parking, the planting, and the so forth. That budget quickly jumped to 4.46 million as a response to COVID-19. So as a design, it was a $4 million budget. Within a week, it jumped to 4.46 million. So I would question, you know, at what stage does that budget stop going up? If the numbers were so correct at the time of design, within 4 to 6 weeks, it's jumped up $500,000. So a question around that is, how much money do the councillors believe they should be putting in or continue to put in if in the event that there's some overruns? And I'll give you a good example. I'm involved in the design business in the construction industry. Te Erehi Pa site is exactly where that building is going to go. So when they excavate to build that building, they have to excavate lower than the car parking level now to create foundations and the swales that they're talking about. Now, there's no money allocated in that budget in the event they find something of archaeological interest. That site will come to a screaming halt while archaeologists and people from historic places investigate that site. So we haven't got a crystal ball to know whether there's something underneath that park, but where's the strategy to say that there could be a delay? Maybe there isn't, but the chances are, given that that area has been occupied for hundreds of years, there's a possibility that something could be unearthed that close to the stream that could put pay to the project timeframes. The other thing is the contractors that will tender for this job will most definitely tender out the risk of an archaeological find. They'll know the history of that site as part of the documents, and therefore there'll be procedures within council to somehow manage that in the event that they find that. But a contractor will definitely not cover the cost of that delay and perhaps the redesign of the building, perhaps the relocation of the building. So you need some numbers around that to manage that risk if you decide to proceed. So therefore I say 4.46 million could easily become a lot more than that in the event that there's archaeological finds within that site. So the next question is, when do you decide to spend more money? You decide to spend more money, as far as I can see, is that you will spend more money during the process and your hands will be tied. If you've broken earth and there's contractors on site and they're creating swales for stormwater and sewage systems, and then you find something untoward, you have got no way of going back from that. You can't get an insurance policy for that. You have to continue to put the ratepayers' money into that development. And I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the PGF fund is a one-off payment. It's one lot of money and there's no coming back for more. The other thing, now the one that really has raised questions for me is that being involved in the construction industry, when someone comes to you to say that they're going to build a building, revenue or the ability to pay that building back, one of the top things on that list. We want to know how much the building costs. We want to know who the customers are. The biggest question of all is, how do we pay for it? There's been quite a lot of numbers and things thrown at it, but conveniently, there's a revenue line that says there's a $256,000 need, or the revenue is projected at $256,000 for the first year. Where does $256,000 come from? That equates to $4,900 a week needs to be pulled into this facility to make it pay for itself. By year 7, they're saying that the revenue needs to be $408,000 a year, which is $7,800 a week. So anyone who's paying rent on a commercial building or even paying rent in a home, $7,800 a week is a hell of a lot of money to get that revenue from where? Are you going to charge the tour operators an exorbitant rent? Are you going to sell tickets that create a commission? Are you selling t-shirts? Are you selling trinkets? How do you earn that money? And I'm quite surprised that David Perks didn't know the numbers around why Zealandia has been topped up by the ratepayer for 20 odd years, given he's in tourism. The fundamental of doing a development surely is to know, and by all means, it's not a crystal ball, But when it's systematically topped up for 20 or 24 years, you have to know that the numbers that were set at the beginning were just too optimistic. So I'm asking the question, is that the case now? Have we got optimistic numbers that paint a really rosy picture in a pre-COVID-19 situation? As councillors, you have to show a financial responsibility, because I'm sure in 2 years' time when re-election comes back up, people in this community will be asking, how much did that building cost us based on what the projections were at the beginning? And it's seen time and time again. The aquatic centre, we got told some wonderful numbers at the beginning, went from $9 million to $22 million build. And I think as of today, we pay $13 as the top up as ratepayers for anyone who goes for a swim. To me, that's just not financially sensible. That's pretty much my my questions. I can't hear you, Guru.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Open for question, Darren. Go in content.
Kia ora, Darren. Thank you very much for taking the time away from your business to share your expertise with us. I think you actually unexpectedly raised a really good issue there, and it's been hinted at in the conversations we've had this morning, is the fact that it is a power site, and that means there is that potential to find something there, whether it's middens, whether it's actual, the foundations of a power site or something. So that's quite interesting. And I remember there's a building in Wellington where on Taranaki Street, I used to live next to it, where they actually did discover, as they were digging out the foundations, the middens left there, and they had to completely stop construction, and they undertook quite an extensive consultation with iwi to redesign the ground floor to accommodate that. And that's obviously adds extra costs there. That, I mean, it's one of those things you don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I think that's a risk that hasn't been brought up so far in this discussion. There's been acknowledgement of the site, but not actually the implications of what that might mean in terms of construction. What I wanted to actually ask you about is to draw on your extensive architectural experience, if I could. Where do you think the cost per square metre for this project sits in terms of a commercial build? Is it at the higher end? Is it sort of gold plated, or are we looking more in the middle or lower range for it in terms of what's been what's on the table for us today? Oh, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, you hear me now?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So the original brief in the TRC report stated that the budget was for around 2 million for a building of 450 square metres. Now, the building is now 235 square metres, and the 2 million that was allocated is basically absorbed into a building of a lot smaller scale. So that building equates to about $8,500 a square metre. Now, I can design and build a relatively nice house for 3,000 a square metre. So you're looking at nearly 3 times the price per square metre. So you could say, okay, there's an extra cost in there because it's of the quality that it needs to be. But there's also $335,000 or $36,000 for the fit out inside that building. So $8,500 a square metre is purely for the construction of a building, not displays and counters and those sorts of things, because there's another 300 grand in the budget for that. So to answer your question, I think it's a very high budget. One thing to keep in mind is that 2 of the designs, of the 4 designs, 2 of the designs left the car park exactly where it was. And whilst it's not as pretty as what Afffields have presented, there's a $1.2 million saving by purely building the building somewhere other than that car park. So the building has added cost purely because of where it's located, and obviously the quality of the build needs to be of tourism standards.
Oh, thank you. That's really helpful.
Right. Anybody else? No.
We have Christopher Ruth.
Martin Holiday. Martin.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say thank you, Darren. You've raised some really good points here. We can't really answer those questions, I'm afraid. That's what the next phase of this is all about, interestingly enough. We haven't even scratched on that one yet. But you brought up some really, really interesting points. I just want to thank you for your input there. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Martin. Cheers.
Jocelyn Brabno.
Thank you, Darren, for very interesting thoughts. a question, you know, just so that everyone knows the situation. The fact that you know about the 4 applicants, were you actually one of those applicants?
Yes, I was.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? No.
Mr. Mayor, we have Christopher Ruth, the last public speaker.
Oh, yeah, you've got, okay. So, Darren, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
input.
Thanks for your time.
Much appreciated.
Okay.
So you got Christopher Rose, is it?
He's just joining now.
Yeah.
Hi there, Christopher.
Hello.
Mr. Rose, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, you can start now.
What's that?
You can start now.
Thank you for that gracious introduction. I have distributed a statement. I hope you've all got it. The Kapiti Gateway, another burden to ratepayers. I won't read it all. I'll have to go at too fast a pace. First point I've said is about the cost to ratepayers, which is clearly on your own facts and figures. I know that you're expecting people to be using this transit lounge, which is basically what it is, paying $21 if they pay each for this income of $256,000. If there is 14,000 tourists, the last figure was about 15,000, 1/3 foreign, so it's probably down to 10,000 internal tourists. So the subsidies from us ratepayers will be considerably higher. Also question the cost. As I said, the aquatic centre went, well, the earliest one was 4 million, but the more realistic one, 9 million to 22 million. The projections of the mayor has said it's going to bring in $5 million a year, and the tourist research consultants talk about 58,000 visits. I've spoken to the chief conservator. It's a whole lot of nonsense. The doc is concerned about the well-being of the island and not creating widened pathways. Your report, it says you got to have the pathways increased by 2.5 times. Well, if you're going to, you as a council can't do it, but your project is based on that rather extreme increase in the real question is, this is a project for the benefit of day trippers. I've gone to the island myself on a number of occasions, and I had no difficulty being bio-checked at the boat. You're going to have 2 people full-time sitting in an office when all the work is done between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and after that there's no interest in people hanging around the building. As a life member of crew, I in fact think it's quite good that the council is going to build this project, because it will then create a precedent for going against everything that the council stood for in its district plan, and the building of buildings in an area which is going to be subject to sea level rise. Your council had, up until 18 months ago, a prediction of a 3-metre sea level rise by 2200. I think you still have a prediction of 75 centimetres by 2050. So the building will be washed away in 30 years, according to your own scientific thing. So it seems extraordinary to me that you're willing to put a project currently 4.6, probably going to $12 million, etc. Also, another thing that I think find extraordinary is I was involved in investigating the car park that was going to be turned into a hotel. That project many years ago did not proceed because of the high water table underneath. This is in exactly the same high water table area. So one suspects that you might have $1 or $2 or $3 million worth of puttings because of that very thing. So the whole thing seems an extraordinary waste of time compared to the urgent necessity for upgrading the library at Waikanae and also having open, as a member of the Workers' Educational Association, we can't get a hall now because you closed down the community centre for an indefinite period pending repairs. And I'm told that it's only got a life expectancy now of 2 to 3 years anyway. So you're not even looking after the buildings you've got to go and spend this on a new lot of buildings where the exterior cladding, from what I see, it looks like an American use of so-called timber, has shown delamination problems and is not going to be long lasting anyway. So I don't want to take any more of my 2 minutes up, but those are my points, and I hope you look at the points I've raised at why this does not seem, this particular proposal should not be pursued and wasting our ratepayers' money on.
Right. Yeah, open for questions. Chris.
Christopher.
Bernie.
Yeah, thank you. Christopher, my question to you is, do you believe the effects of the COVID-19 economy has been taken into account for this gold standard gateway?
Absolutely not. They have taken it into account into increasing the cost of the building, but not into account into the number of tourists. As I said, the tourists, last year, I rang the Conservator yesterday, they don't have it for the last financial year, but the previous figures were somewhere around 15,000, of which 1/3 were foreign tourists. So that's 5,000. So that reduces the local tourists down to 10,000. Also, if you heard the news last night, 34% of New Zealanders are facing financial stress. Then you have the reduction of expendable dollars on pleasure things. So now tourists, you might be lucky to get 10,000, and that'll mean that the cost of people paying their $21 to go into this facility for 20 minutes in the morning will escalate to $30 or $40, or what is more likely is that we ratepayers will, instead of it costing us $60,000 to $80,000 a year, it'll be costing us $200,000 a year, because these the figures that are relied on are pure fantasy.
Right, thank you.
Martin Holliday, then Gwen Compton.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for your patience. I just wanted to.
3 hours I waited.
Yeah, it's been a long one for all of us.
I wish I had charge out time.
We haven't even started actually yet. In regards to the building itself, or in regards to having something down at the beach, that's a step up from where we are now. Potentially what we're looking at is a few steps up, but are you supportive of something being down there in regards to the Kapiti Island experience?
Well, I personally think it would be good to have something there. A lot of work was done on looking around the boat shed side of the creek. But yes, but it's a transit centre. That's all it is. And it's only going to be used for half an hour or so every morning. This amazing idea. We're going to have 2 council officers there 5 days a week, just making ratepayers without money, making it more unaffordable. I'm surprised that with all the socialists on the council that is even contemplating. This should be funded by DOC. If DOC thought it was any good, it would be like the Mount Bruce, it would be like up at Lake Waikau and Moana, it would be like all over the place. They put in buildings where they think it is accessing and improving the park system. They've got no interest in paying for this because they think it's an absolutely silly idea. But putting up a shelter for $10,000, good idea, you know.
I think we're pretty keen if that happens. Look, and look, it's actually, you just brought up a very good point, which I hadn't considered, which I'll bring up in the questions, is the allowance for the full-time staff, whether it's actually for 5 or 7 days. I'm actually not clear whether this is a 5 or a 7 day operation we're talking about, which again would be a difference to the figures as well. So thank you for that.
It's clearly it's 5 days because it's $45,000 a year, and that includes all the monuments. So presumably on the weekend when it's busy, there won't be any staff anyway.
Well, we'll certainly get some clarity. We'll certainly get some clarity around that.
How bad that report is, because it's a shockingly incompetent report that doesn't go into those vital details. It puts in these bland figures, and 6 months later, when the council said, "Oh, we agree with this," "Oh, I'm sorry, it's going to cost an extra $100,000. What's an extra $100,000?" The mayor will tell us it'll only cost you another 35 cents a week, dear ratepayers, and they all mount up. In the end, you can't afford the cup of coffee. Big men's pies.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks, Chris. That was my question answered. Thank you very much.
Councillor Compton.
Well, kia ora, Christopher, and thank you for sharing your views and your patience actually in getting connected to the meeting today. In your speech, you talked about the economic impact from this. I think you put the figure of $5 million, but you also alluded to the Waikanai Library. I was wondering if you're aware that Leanne's, the representative body for libraries in New Zealand, puts the economic return for every dollar invested in libraries at around $3 to $9 in economic, social and cultural business benefits, and that would be that'd be a significantly higher BCR than what we're looking at from the Gateway Centre. So do you think making a comparable investment into accelerating the fixing of Waikanai Library instead of doing this, given that's a core service that council provides, do you think that's something that councillors should consider in their deliberations today?
Absolutely, I think you've made a very, very strong point there. I haven't looked at the economic impact, but the libraries are a vital service. They're a centre of all communities in New Zealand, the research has shown, and the council has put on the never list the upgrading of or the replacement of the Waikanai Library, and for the council to think, forget about the people in Waikanai, we're going to put $2 million, probably $5 million in the end of our own money into a new building when you've got a building that you should be repairing as we speak. It's quite unbelievable, and as you say, its cost benefit is far greater. And the mental health of, as you know, in our submission for Rob many months ago, we showed all the research showing the vital importance of libraries for the mental health of the community, keeping down presumably medical costs. And the council isn't doing it, and I notice the council hasn't increased substantially the sum for books, that it's willing to spend it on. This is a private enterprise thing. The Gateway to the thing, it's nothing to do with the council. Other than perhaps providing the land. And that's a significant contribution, and then private enterprise who benefits from the tourism should pay. This is not helping the poor old ladies or the people who have to queue up to the Salvation Army for things, and I can't understand why the Labour Party people seem to be all in favour of squandering our money.
Right, thank you, Christopher.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. Oh, there's one for you, Mr. Rob McCann.
Hey, thank you very much for coming and speaking. And I just, being the only Labour Party person standing on a ticket in this council, I'd just like to make it very clear that my decision has not been made, and we're trying to base this on all the evidence. But I do thank you for speaking. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but I thought it was worth saying.
I wasn't thinking in particular of you, but I understood that there were 3 or 4 other councillors that are Labour orientated and not Labour elected members. I know that you're the only Labour elected member. I hope you take into account the increased rates that you'll be causing if this goes ahead and the numbers don't turn up, and the I mean, the subsidies on the aquatic centre currently, with thanks to COVID and all the rest, is about $19 per swimmer. It has been $10 a swimmer earlier, and that was another project that was going to cost less. It was going to bring in all these benefits. It was going to do this, that, and the other, and it turned out to be absolute twaddle. And we ratepayers keep on subsidising for the benefits of individuals in a basically disproportionate way for the privileged few.
I do think that that is probably a debate that is outside the scope of this particular discussion, but you can expand that debate to the privileged few who need the health system or the police or anyone else. I think provision of services that you're speaking of
look, can I just interrupt here? Can I just interrupt here and say, look, hang on a moment. I think we have exhausted the questions relevant to the agenda. We are now electioneering for the coming elections. We are entitled to our own political views on this matter. So with that, I thank you graciously, Mr. Ruth, for your time, and apologies for the long time you had to wait. It takes up a lot of time in one's life. Thank you. Right, I think that's the last submitter. We have exhausted ourselves. Can we come? I think it's time for a break. 1:30. We should be all back. Have your lunch. Enjoy your lunch. It's been long. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.